Good evening. I want to welcome you all to the Board of Zoning Appeals, and we'll go ahead and call the meeting to order, and Ms. Parker will read the opening statement.
We would like to welcome all present to the meeting of the Board of Zoning Appeals. Mr. Jeff Carson is serving as chairman this evening. The format for this meeting is as follows. As each application is called, we would ask that all those both for and against to please come to the front of the room. The applicant will make the opening statement explaining the proposal. Please note that the applicant will be given 15 minutes to present their case. The 15 minutes includes the applicant and any consultants and other members of the applicant's team. Members of the board will then address any questions they may have to the applicant. Any persons wishing to speak in favor will be allowed to do so at that time. Then those persons in opposition will be allowed to make their statements and ask questions. Please note that each member of the public who wishes to speak either for or against the application will be given 5 minutes to express their opinions. Time may not be shared between speakers. A speaker at the podium may request to extend their time, and the board may, by 2/3 majority vote, extend any speaker's time in 5-minute increments. The applicant will then answer questions and make a closing statement. All statements at the meeting shall be directed to the board, and cross-conversation among those in attendance is prohibited. Questions between opposing parties shall be directed first to the chairman, who may then ask the proper person to answer, such answer being directed to the board. The public hearing portion of the meeting will then be closed, and the public will only be allowed to address the board if a question is directed to them. The staff will then make their comments and recommendation. The board will discuss the application and make their decision. A brief statement of the reason for the motion will precede the making of the motion. Motions to approve shall include the staff stipulations unless otherwise stated in the motion. Also, all items or exhibits submitted and/or shown either to the board or staff during the hearing will be retained and become part of the official record of these proceedings. The board is required to disclose contacts with regard to any item on the agenda. Before each item, I will ask if any contacts have been made, and members of the board will be asked to disclose those contacts at that time. We ask that anyone with a cell phone to please turn them off or switch to non-audio so you will not disturb the meeting. Our first appeal is number 2350, Stephen Maslin, for property at 2423 Metropolitan Avenue. Does any member of the board have any contact to disclose with regard to this case?
No.
All those for and against, please come to the front of the room.
Actually, Mr. Chairman, I apologize. I do have a contact to disclose. I was contacted by counsel for the petitioner.
Okay.
Thank you.
Is your microphone on?
Okay,
It was when I said
thank you.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Go ahead and give us your name and address for the record and tell us about your project.
I'm Stephen Maslin. I live at 5702 West 131st Street in Overland Park, Kansas. My office is at 8011 Paseo in Kansas City, Missouri. I'm not the engineer of record for this project, but I've been working for Mr. Chima to help resolve the landscaping issue that he has with the problem. Go ahead.
Well, what are you here tonight to get?
We're here to get a variance on the landscaping issue for Mr. Chima's property at 2423 and 2425 Metropolitan.
And what's the issue?
The issue is there's no room to put the landscaping because the distance from the island on the gas station to the curb or to the property line is 8.42 feet. The distance from the island to the curb, which is over there, is 13.02 feet. So if you were to put trees in front of 2423 Metropolitan, nobody would be able to drive through that lane and fill their car up with gas. The other issue is at 2423 Metropolitan, and we created a drive there so we could get to the dumpster in the back. Again, it was paved before. It was never an issue with the architect that drew up the plans that there was a question about the property line because it was always paved. So the only new paving is on the side of the building. Now this project, as I understand, Mr. Chima said that the building was expanded to the rear of the building, not to the front. So we didn't encroach any additional area in the front of the building. I have gone through all the list of all the things that were given to me to answer, and I've answered them, I think, in a proper fashion. But I think that you need to understand that there's no place to put shrubs or trees. If you put them in the public right-of-way, it'd be in the sidewalk. Well, people aren't going to want to walk on the sidewalk if there are trees in the sidewalk. And that goes for shrubs as well. We met with the neighbors across the street, as a matter of fact, in our neighborhood meeting, which was a very nice meeting, and Mr. Chima will tell you the same. They couldn't understand why anybody at this department would want to put landscaping in front of those gas pumps. The same thing is true for the stores, which are right next to it. So the gas pumps and the gas station, the C-store that we call it, is on the west side and the shops, which go from A to, I think there are 5 shops, right? Yeah, there are 5 shops. And so they're small shops for small businesses. I think that they have a cell phone business in one of them. So there's limited parking in front. We had to put parking on the side and parking in back. And Mr. Chima has actually gone over and above the landscaping in the rear of the building. He's planted trees in the back, and I've sent you pictures of those trees and shrubs. And he's planted around the dumpster as well. He's planted on the side of on the east side of the building, and it looks really nice. But you just would create a problem if you put any trees or shrubs in front of this property.
Okay. Are there any questions for the petitioner?
I have one quick one. Mr. Madison, how are you doing?
Yeah.
I have a question. So on the revised landscape plan, there are, I just can't read at the resolution of what's in our staff report, which is an electronic copy. There are 5 either trees or shrubs. I guess it would be at the southeast corner of the property. Are those the new trees or shrubs that you were?
Yeah, those are around the trash dumpster, actually. Yeah, those
Okay,
go around
so
the trash dumpster.
you also mentioned photographs. I don't think we have any additional photographs of the trees themselves. There are photographs in the staff report of the buildings.
Well, I sent them to the planner. I don't know why she didn't include them in the report.
Do you know when those pictures were sent?
About 3 weeks ago.
Oh, okay. So in plenty of time. Okay. We'll get to the bottom of that.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Okay, seeing none, we'll open up the public portion of the meeting. Is there anyone in the audience that wants to speak in favor of or in opposition to this request? Yes, sir.
Well, Rick Rehorn, 4151 Cambridge, Kansas City, Kansas. Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, I'm the lawyer for Khalid Chima, who's sitting over here this evening. This whole project's had a pretty tortuous past over the past couple of years, but now we're here again. Many years ago, I served on the Board of Zoning Appeals, and I realized how difficult some of the decisions you have to make are. But I also remember the fun part was sometimes the Board of Zoning Appeals is the only board that can fix a big problem. And we have a big problem. And I think the statutory criteria are subjective enough that you can fix the problem we have. The issue is, as I understand it, is if the landscaping goes in, there won't be enough room for cars to get through on one of the gas pumps. And Mr. Chima has almost $1 million investment in this property, and that's the issue we're facing. I'm not a professional when it comes to design and engineering, but it's my understanding this problem was caused initially by a mistake made by Mr. Chima's design professional in its plans to the city. In fact, the staff says that the problem was caused solely by our design professional. The staff also acknowledges they did not catch the mistake, but said that it was one of those mistakes that would be hard to catch. So I assume if it was hard to catch, it would be easy to make. So it seems to me like we have a mutual mistake that's not actually Mr. Chima's fault. And this is the only board that can fix the problem for us. So we're asking for the variance to allow Mr. Chima to proceed with the station. I'll be glad to answer any questions if anyone has any.
Just one, is there any area of compromise to include any landscaping that doesn't currently exist in other parts of there that might compensate for the lack of what is required?
Not to my knowledge, but we would gladly put landscaping where it was suitable. I guess the main problem is by the pumps, and the pumps were there before.
Right.
The pumps were there before we owned the property, and the sidewalk was there too. So, if there is some negotiable position, we'd be glad to entertain it.
Okay, thank you. Any questions? Commissioner Jones?
Yes, I have a question. I thought I read in the staff report that part of the concrete was put in later, and that there was some opportunity to have some landscaping.
The concrete was always there. It was just repaved.
Okay.
So
They
there's
put-
no
put in
additional
new-
new
they put
flat,
in-
there's no new flat work that wasn't existing before.
They put in new concrete. They tore up the old one and put in new concrete.
Okay, so right there, I guess my wonderment would be, when it was torn up, was there not a sufficient opportunity to be able to take advantage of it having been torn up, do what the plan required with the landscaping, and then concrete the portion that would need to be concreted?
So the requirement is for parking that you have at least 18 or 19-foot depth for a car, and that you have 25 feet in back of it to back up and for the car to get out of that space so he can turn right or left. In this particular case, you barely have that amount of room.
So let me
So
ask,
there would not be any, you'd be running over the trees and the shrubbery if there was any there. And if there was an opportunity at that time, it was not a proper decision at that time to do, okay? The contractor was given the opportunity he wanted just brand-new concrete. I assume Mr. Chima wanted to make it look really nice and spiffy, and he didn't want to have the old concrete out there. So he wanted new concrete, and that's what he did. We paved right up to the property. I'm sure that the inspectors were by on several occasions and saw the work being done. Nobody said anything about it.
so in my mind, I guess the disconnect between what we have in our staff report versus, I understand what you're saying, but there just seemed to be, after reading the staff report, again, an opportunity for this to have been corrected and right-sized. And so for it to be reconciled in my mind, certainly, and I know staff will give comments because that's how I took it. There was a window of opportunity, and then the opportunity was not taken advantage of, is how I left it in my mind.
Well, but there was no room to put the trees.
Yeah, well, and see, that's where the disconnect is,
Yeah.
because the report that we have, and all candor, indicates something else versus what you're indicating, and that's where there's a disconnect. And so I hear what you're saying, and then I'll just wait till staff says what they need to say.
Also, I don't think we'd want to put our trees in the public right-of-way either.
Okay. We'll get some answers to that when we get to the staff side, so I appreciate those comments. Mr. Rehorn, did you have anything else?
No, I don't. I just wanted to
Okay.
answer the question to me.
Any questions for Mr. Rehorn? All right, thank you. Is there anyone in the audience that wants to speak in favor of or in opposition to this request? Okay, seeing none, we'll close the public portion of the meeting. We'll get staff comment.
Sorry about that. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So this really comes down to the fact that when they had the concrete torn up, they could have planted trees. We allow trees to be planted in the right-of-way or shrubs in the right-of-way all the time. It's their responsibility to maintain out to the curb. So as long as there's not a utility issue, which we could have, we weren't afforded the opportunity to review, they made the decision to apply for this variance and make a hardship. They could have applied for a variance to the parking standards and how wide they are. They didn't do that. They went ahead and poured the concrete. They didn't talk to us while it was open, and there could have been a different solution made. So they really chose their path here. It really comes down to they don't want to tear out the concrete. If you drive up there, you could put a small landscaping island in between the pump and the sidewalk. Now it would be tight, but I drove up there and parked my truck to where I could get out and get gas, and there was still room on the other side of my truck. Now it's not a big area, but it could be done. The code requires the landscaping. When this originally came forward, the reason the Board of Commissioners originally denied this was because of the way it would look, and it didn't have sufficient landscaping. The applicant sued the unified government, which is their right. That's fine. Sometimes we make mistakes. And they submitted a site plan to the court that had landscaping on it. And the court said, "You're right. Approve that plan." And that's the plan that the unified government approved. I really think that this is an issue that but a couple things. One, I looked in my email, Kim looked through her email. We received a response to the staff report, but did not contain pictures. So I don't know if he sent the wrong email address or what, but neither Kim or I have that in our email for pictures from this case. But if this was really the issue, we would have gotten a survey dimensioned plan that showed what the actual dimensions are and why they couldn't do it. It wouldn't just have to be Rob going out and parking his truck out there and seeing, well, there's, 3, 4, 5 feet over here. I didn't take a tape measure with me, but, this really comes to them creating their own hardship here. They submitted a plan. When they knew they were going to deviate from the plan, it's their responsibility to come and talk to us, not to finish the plan so that it is impossible to implement the plan, and that's what they've done. That's why we'd recommend denial.
Questions for staff?
I have a couple.
Commissioner Serta?
Rob, so one thing, with regard to those trees that I mentioned before, we don't have photographs of them, but the plan is revised and the applicant testified they have planted 5 trees to screen the dumpsters. You can see the dumpsters on page 15 at the top photograph. Well, the dumpster enclosure. It looks like a berm with fencing around it. And I assume those trees would be right behind and around it. There's also, and you can see it here on this diagram, 2 areas that are annotated as being lawn. I said there are 2 areas that are annotated there, they're hashed, that are annotated as being lawn. Other than that area where those 5 trees are marked, would it be feasible to put other landscaping there and satisfy the landscaping requirement?
So, the variance, trade me, Michael.
Yeah.
Okay, that'll be better. The variance they've requested is to the street trees, and that's section 577B3A and also 577B2, that they're supposed to have continuous rows of trees and shrubs to screen from the adjacent development and the public streets. And their previous plan showed enough room to do that, to put the shrubs and the street trees in. And they really haven't shown us a dimension plan that shows that they can't do that. They've just given us this, which doesn't even really, if you go back over to so the area in question is right in here, in this area right there by the sidewalk. And they haven't even given us a dimension plan that shows that that's not possible. I mean, I think that that's incumbent upon them. I mean, if you drive up there and drive your car there, yeah, it would be tight if there was an island there, but you could still drive in there, service your car, and pull. You can't get 2 cars through there, so it's not a matter of It's one, you can't pass the other car between the gas pump and the street. It's, can you even get a car in there? And yes, you can get a car in there, and you could move the curb, and you could put some landscape, and you could fulfill some or all of this, but we really don't know because they haven't given us the plan. And I don't think that you know, I guess you could say they could put more trees or something somewhere else, but I don't think that's the intent of the code.
Well, it's also not the request in the variance. The variance is basically to waive those requirements.
Correct.
Okay. But let me ask you a different question, because if this is denied, I mean, I'm just wondering if the applicant has any alternative path, because what really struck me was the statement and the staff comments and suggestions on page 4. Comment 1 says, the applicant appealed this plan to Wyandotte County District Court, and the court ordered approval of this plan. Given the court order, staff does not have authority to make modifications. The applicant must indicate how the city has authority to modify the court order. Would that suggest that, you know, if they reapplied for a subsequent plan review, would that have to reopen all of the issues again, or there's no path for them to even do that? I was very confused by that.
So they would have, I mean, they've basically done everything that was on that plan except this landscaping. So you know, this is really the final issue for them to finish this project.
Okay.
You know, when somebody hands me a plan and says the court says you have to approve this, I'm not want to go make changes to that, especially considering, I know that they talk to the neighbors, but you know, it's not, we had input from the neighborhood group, the NBR, and others about what would this look like, and landscaping was an integral part of that. And it's not just the neighbors across the street that this impacts, and this is a very busy street, and you know, they presented a plan that they said met our code, and the court said yes it does, and they haven't built that plan.
Okay. But let me ask you a procedural question about that, because I vaguely remember when this came before us, and I believe it came before us more than once, correct?
Yes.
I think it came before us and was held over, was heard again. And my recollection, correct me if I'm wrong, is that the Plan Commission actually approved the plan.
Correct.
It was the Board of Commissioners that denied the plan.
Yes, you approved the plan that had landscaping along Metropolitan and did
Okay.
not need any variances, and the staff recommended approval of that plan.
Okay. It's also my recollection that when this went back to the Board of Commissioners actually did not vote on it. And I'm looking at page 21. At the bottom of that, the final item on that court order says, the Unified Government Board of Commissioners' decision to deny PR 2016-7 is hereby reversed, and this matter sent back to the Board of Commissioners with this court's order to the Board of Commissioners to approve the application. I have a distinct, and correct me if I'm wrong, I have a distinct recollection that the Board of Commissioners actually declined to approve the application at that time and never took a vote on the matter. So did that happen? Did that happen in some form? Was this order modified? Because, I mean, I'm not an attorney, but, and again, maybe Patrick needs to weigh on this, but, I mean, reading that plainly, it says the Board of Commissioners was ordered to approve the application, and I have a distinct recollection that they didn't. I mean, they never affirmatively acted to approve it.
Dr. Serta, I would have to go back and look. I do recall that there were objections about having to be forced to approve something that they didn't recall. I don't recall if at the end they did that or not, but either way, it is deemed to have been approved. The court order was enforced, and so the plan was deemed to have been approved. But
Well, the reason I bring that up is because to me, if there's some subjective gray area about how binding the court's order was on the details, then it seems the appropriate path of this might not be a variance, but basically reopening the plan review.
Well,
To get the
you have to, I
correct
mean,
relative to whatever it
you
is.
still have to, if you get the variance, you still have to do a plan review, right? Because we don't have the, I mean, the first step in this process is to get the variance,
Okay.
because you can't do a plan review that violates and get a plan review approved that violates the code. So
Sure.
step one is
Is the variance.
the variance, and that's the issue
Okay.
before the board tonight.
Okay. So basically, there's two paths. Either if the variance is approved, then the requirement for that additional landscaping goes away.
Correct.
If the variance is denied, then the trees have to be planted
Correct.
where they were specified in the plan, which the petitioner has said is in the right-of-way.
Well, that's fine. We have trees in the right of way in lots of places. They could have asked us that question while the dirt was torn up and while they had the concrete out.
I'm not trying to get into the weeds on it.
Yeah.
I just want to make sure we understand what the alternatives are. Okay, thank you.
Commissioner Jones.
So Rob, my question is, because we'd like to be able to see this resolved, but it resolved, of course, in a way that's appropriate. And so I know you said you don't have the pictures that the petitioner said that he sent, so that's curious, and I want to go back to ask. I don't know if he has them with him or what, but that's another matter. So is there any, as far as you know, from your perspective, staff's perspective, is there any precedent? Has anything even close to this happened before? And pause for that question for a minute. My other question right behind that is, are there, as far as you know, any alternatives that once concrete has been poured, you can still do some acceptable landscaping?
So as far as a case like this before, not that I'm aware of, I mean, you know, we're especially not involving the corridor. We've had people that just didn't plant landscaping and they had to go back and plant it later. I don't know if they had to file a variance for it, but we regularly have people that don't want to do their landscaping, and it's just a matter of they don't want to. They just don't want to tear out the concrete here. And that's really what the matter comes down to. They don't want to tear out the concrete. They don't want the expense of it. They don't want to maintain it because there is room to do some. And, you know, for instance, can I see the mouse for just a second? You know, if this was, you know, this corner could be rounded right here and you could put something in there. You know, there's some area right here that's not quite as shallow as it is over here. You know, there are areas where this could be done. And they haven't even made attempts to show us what that could be and what little bit they could do, if they could do any at all. They just want a blanket waiver. And that's where I feel that this application really fails, is that, you know, there is something that could be done, but they don't want to do anything. And they went out and paved over where they could have done it because they didn't want to do it.
Yeah, I know you're not a landscaping expert, but when you say that, Rob, are you talking about perhaps options that wouldn't require the tearing up of the concrete?
No, there's not really anything they could do without taking out some of the concrete. And they're going to have to dig out below it, restore the dirt that's had the concrete impact on it, because otherwise the plants will die when they put it in.
So really, this variance is an all or none situation, because once you tear up even a little bit of the concrete, whether you have 5 trees or 10 trees is really almost irrelevant at that point.
Right. I mean, I think if you were going to approve something, that it might approve that the landscaping area be narrowed based off of, you know, to allow room for the car to get gas and, you know, have room to do that, whatever that is. And then if the area is only wide enough for shrubs, then we put shrubs in. If there's areas where we can put trees in, we put trees in. But, you know, I think that's the solution. It's not to say they don't have to do any landscaping. It's to work with us to develop a reasonable landscape plan that involves removal of the concrete and installation of the landscape along Metropolitan.
So let me ask this other question, because I don't want to get too far in the weeds, but I think this is important, especially with how this has kind of gone back and forth. So from your perspective, staff's perspective, how do you think that opportunity, that while that concrete was torn up, I know I heard you say you maybe didn't think they wanted to do it, but do you think it was an honest mistake, or was there some sort of, I hate to say it, but malicious intent, or, you know, just some sort of ill will?
Yeah, I don't think it's appropriate to answer that.
But they missed an opportunity.
They certainly didn't come to us and say, hey, we've got a problem. And that's what happens with most development. If they come into an issue like this, they come to us and say, hey, we've got a problem.
If that would have happened, what would have been the outcome of that conversation?
We probably would have come to you with a variance request that had a different landscape plan, but had landscape included in it. And we probably would have worked out an arrangement that they could have gone ahead and installed, and, you know, that I probably would have, you know, talked to the chairman of the Board of Zoning Appeals, said this is what's going on, we've got somebody that wants to open, you know, they've got to get it ready to do this, you know, or let them leave it open until we could get here and get everything else in order and leave that area as a question mark so that they wouldn't create their own hardship. But, you know, the code and the state statute's pretty clear. If you create your own hardship, you can't get a variance. I think there's multiple times here that they've created their own hardship.
Commissioner Serta.
I just want to, so again, procedurally, I'm still not entirely clear on what the path is if this is denied. Because it still sounds as if though if this is denied, their alternative is to plant the 9 trees as specified in that original plan. You know, hypothetically, if you were going back to that conversation, I think you referenced this earlier in your comments, there could have been a parking variance, correct?
I think based on Mr. Maslin's comments, he was saying that, you know, you would have needed a variance for the width of the drive aisles.
Okay. But again, that's still assuming a different landscaping plan.
Possibly, maybe not. I mean, you know, it's very difficult for us to do our jobs when we don't have, and this way, I don't believe the original plan here was Mr. Maslin's.
Yeah.
Because I don't want to give the impression that I'm throwing him under the bus here, but
Yeah.
this is, we were presented a sealed plan that didn't have accurate dimensions and accurate right-of-way lines on it. You know, that puts us in a very difficult position. And so, to answer your question procedurally, Dr. Serta, I think that if the Board of Zoning Appeals gave us the direction to get a landscaping plan that would work to the greatest extent possible, that is probably their best solution. I mean, I don't think that, because that kind of gets them out of that we create our own hardship, because we're going to go do landscaping, but we, you know, I don't know, maybe it does, maybe it doesn't. I guess that's up to you all to decide, but you know.
But what form does that take, just to be specific? I mean, would that be denying this first and then making a recommendation, or denying with a recommendation, or
Approving with direction, I
approving
think
with
is what.
direction?
Does that make sense? I mean, that you say we
Yeah.
approve the variance, but we got to go out and figure out what the dimensions are on the site plan. We will rely on staff to do that, and what types of landscaping could actually go into that area that's left. You know, I think there is something to the fact that, you know, that area might be too narrow for trees at some point, depending on the type of tree that you planted. But we really don't know that because they haven't presented that to us in any kind of dimensioned plan.
Other questions for staff? Seeing none, I'll stand for a motion.
Are we making a motion to approve, subject to the petitioner working with staff to develop a revised landscape plan to the extent that's feasible, incorporate additional landscaping into the site plan?
Second.
Motion to approve, subject to the additional stipulations by the maker of the motion. Is there any discussion or any clarification needed?
My question is, does this get us around what we run into almost every meeting, and that's they created their own hardship, and therefore the guy's got to go home and cut down his fence because he didn't know any better? That's a question for staff. And if it does, that's great.
Yeah. I guess it comes down to the fact if you consider having to take out the concrete and do something else. I mean, the fence is a little different because, you know, you gotta, if you're telling them by this to cure their hardship because they can take the concrete out, then I think you get around that. I don't think, you can't really do that with the fence the same way. Does that make sense?
Yeah, there are other issues that we run into all
Right.
the time.
But I think that this is one where they're, I don't know, Patrick, do you have any thought on that? I'm trying to,
Not sure I followed on that. Does approval get them around?
Approval with what Dr. Serta has proposed get us around the fact that we cannot approve anything that is a hardship created by the applicant. It's just state law. It's not one I really like.
well, I think this is, I think this is like, you know, we had a case where someone built a garage in the setback and that had to be taken down. And the remedy was to take down the garage. In this case, the remedy is take out your concrete and, because that's the hardship, right, the concrete. So you're removing the hardship because they have to take that out, and then they're going to do a different landscape plan. So I think that kind of, if you look at it 2 steps, they have to take the concrete out still, which was the cause of their hardship. So you're telling them to remove the hardship that they created and then install a different landscape plan.
Commissioner Neal?
Kind of to piggyback on that, I mean, is that the proper procedure, or is there a procedure to where we deny this petition and then they petition again with the proper?
So what you're saying is, should you deny this, would the proper procedure be deny this petition, they go take out their concrete and present a new landscaping plan?
Yeah, because if we deny this, they have to take out the concrete. And then if they want to submit, or of course, they're, according to codes and from what I understand, according to the court judgment, they're required to put landscaping in that place. So it would still be upon them to have to submit something for landscaping in the place that they have to take out the concrete.
Right. So are there other questions while I can ponder that for just a minute? Okay.
Commissioner Jones?
So are we sure from a landscaping subject matter expert position that there's no other acceptable landscaping that can be put in? Because that's what I was thinking about, giving that opportunity with the landscaping subject matter expert. What can we possibly do to make this work?
Well, you got to have dirt there to put something in, and there's no dirt to put anything in right now. It's all paved. So I don't know if that makes a, I don't know that makes
Right,
a
but if
difference.
there was some sort of planter acceptably or something, I don't know because I'm not a landscaping expert.
Well, planters do not offer the opportunity to have year-round landscaping. That's for certain. I don't know. I guess you could put evergreen trees in planters.
Commissioner Serta has a comment he'd like to make.
I don't know about the specifics, but I want to clarify the intent of the motion as I made it. And I was very careful in choosing the wording that I did, because what I wanted to suggest was that there would be a waiver of the requirements for that specific number of trees and shrubs, but there would not be a full waiver of the requirement for landscaping. The reason I said to the extent that's feasible, I was really referring to the extent that it's technically feasible, basically as to be determined by the design professional and staff working on that. So I guess one way I would describe that is, in making that motion, I would assume some concrete is going to be moved and some landscaping is going to be installed. I don't know what specifically it's going to be done, but what I do know is that it would not be done per the plan showing those 9 trees in those specific locations.
Yeah, and Commissioner Serta, I'd have to say that was my initial thought. But again, because I'm not a landscaping expert, my thought was to piggyback. That's why I seconded, because some sort of other option to be pursued is what we'd like to see, it sounds like, or that's what we're proposing.
And again, my thought was that staff, by working with the applicant's design professional, could figure something out that works to the satisfaction of staff. I would also say, I'm sure you've all heard me say this. I generally am very averse to waiving landscaping requirements. They're in the code. I think we need to be very consistent in our application of them. I do think, though, that there is a purpose of variances with regard to the specifics of the site, in a particular instance that may or may not be amenable to everything that's specified in the code.
So as another point of discussion, I'd like to hear from staff, and maybe you're going to speak to this, Rob, just real quick, in terms of how much of a danger zone do you think it's in? Because we do work carefully to be, to think about precedent and not setting a dangerous precedent that is going to come back to haunt us, quite frankly.
Yeah, I'm trying to think of, I mean, and Byron, I asked Byron too, of cases where we've had a variance that was similar to this. You know, typically it's you know, cut the fence off, take the garage down. I don't know that we've had one that was situated like this where there was really a two-part solution to it. So I don't know that, and I don't know that that would be a bad precedent to set. I mean, I don't know that we have to say, it's noticed for a full waiver of the code, and if we give them a partial variance on that, it seems like we're within what we've noticed and what they've asked for, and you're still eliminating the hardship that they created. In most cases, you can't do that, right? I mean, most of the cases that we have, it's really bad, right? I mean, there's no solution around it because they've done something in advance that we can't solve. This is one where it's taking out concrete and putting landscape back in. So I think you can solve it. You're having them eliminate the hardship, which is what you would do if you fully denied it. And it's just it's acknowledging that there is another problem there, not created by the owner, but we still want to have the code met to the extent possible, and we want the hardship eliminated to the extent possible. I think Dr. Serta's motion does that, and I don't know, Pat, I don't remember a case where we could have done this, or I think it would have come up.
I can't remember. I guess my only question would be, Dr. Serta, do you want them to come back to the board if agreement can't be reached? Is that the basis, that you're giving staff discretion to work with the applicant? Assuming.
I would think it would be more the latter, because, I mean, you would know. I don't know procedurally whether we could sort of do a contingent approval and then have them come back.
Right.
But again, I would think the way that I worded it authorizes the details to be worked out in consultation with staff.
And I think given the fact that they're ready to open, I mean, this is keeping them from opening.
Right.
Yeah.
That if we worked something out that had landscaping in it, we could approve the plan, they could bond the plan and open just like anybody else did. Yeah.
Any other additional questions for staff? Okay, the motion on the floor is to approve, subject to the additional stipulations outlined by the maker. Is there any further discussion? Seeing none, roll call.
Ernst,
Aye.
Huey,
Aye.
Jones,
Aye.
Miller,
Aye.
Neal,
Aye.
Serta.
Aye.
Mr. Chairman, that motion to approve this appeal with the stipulations passes, 6 in favor and none opposed.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, you want to make an announcement about the Planning Commission meeting?
Planning Commission meeting will be, I'm sorry, what announcement are you talking about? The Board of Commissioners? Oh, yes, I'm sorry. Yes, we are 1 down and we have 6 to go, so I hope you're all comfortable, because we may be in for a long evening. So we will start the Planning Commission meeting immediately following this one when we get there.
Our next appeal is number 2352, Dan Mutish with Infinity Sign Monuments for property at 7524 State Avenue. Does any member of the board have any contact to disclose with regard to this application? Mr. Chairman, I did distribute an email that we received today from a neighbor in opposition who could not be present this evening.
Thank you. And would you also let the record show that Dr. Serta had to leave the meeting?
Yes.
Good evening. Go ahead and give us your name and address and tell us about your project.
Yes, sir. My name is Eric Pickett with Infinity Sign Systems. Dan Matouche is a teammate of mine, and he actually is our sign permit specialist. We have actually installed legally 3 wall signs and refaced an existing monument sign structure at this property, and the client would also like a LED wall display on the north elevation to help facilitate wayfinding and validate where you would turn in if in fact you would be coming to this property going southbound on, I believe it's 75th Street.
Are there questions for the petitioner? Okay, seeing none, we'll open up the public portion of the meeting. Is there anyone in the audience who wants to speak in favor of or in opposition to this request? Seeing none, we'll close the public portion of the meeting. We'll get staff comment.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Byron, this is the first I've seen of the email as well, but is 7510 the car wash? No, the one from the, what's the address on that one? Oh, okay, it's not one of the adjacent. Okay, so the letter in opposition is more than a parcel away from this. It's not the car wash, it's the next parcel to the north. Just want to make sure we were all clear where the objecting letter came from. With that note, since it's not adjacent, I don't think this will be an issue for parcels that aren't adjacent, or even to parcels that are adjacent, quite frankly. I'd recommend approval subject to the stipulations of the staff report.
Thank you. Any questions for staff? Seeing none, we'll stand for a motion.
Move to approve, subject to the stipulations in the staff report.
Second.
A motion to approve made by Commissioner Miller, seconded by Commissioner Huey. Any discussion? Seeing none, roll call.
Ernst,
Aye.
Huey,
Aye.
Jones,
Aye.
Miller,
Aye.
Neal.
Aye.
Mr. Chairman, that motion to approve this appeal, subject to the staff's comments and suggestions, passes 5 in favor and none opposed.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Our next appeal is number 2353, Abdul Maseed, for property at 1010 Merriam Lane. Does any member of the board have any contact to disclose with regard to this case?
No.
All those for and against, please come to the front of the room.
Folks, as we run behind, if you see your case being called, if you could be ready to be at the podium by the time we get a call, that'll help speed things along.
Thank you so much. Good evening.
Yes.
My name is Austin Parker. I am legal counsel for the applicant, A Plus Auto Sales in this case. I have a flash drive that might speed this up with a...
If anyone else in the audience has presentations they haven't given to us yet, go ahead and bring those up and we'll get those loaded before your presentation starts.
Thank you so much. So the first slide is just informational what we're talking about. It's 1010 Merriam Lane, Kansas City, Kansas. Thank you so much. Second slide provides the context for why we're here for a rehearing. So to provide a little bit of procedural context, and I want to make it clear, this was simply a misunderstanding. Okay, this is the first opportunity that I've had appearing before the Planning Commission and Board of Zoning Appeals and Unified Government's governing body on any factual matter. I come out of the government side down in Wichita, Kansas. I appreciate all the work that staff and you all do as volunteers serving your community, so I appreciate your time even listening to this evening. I had an understanding based off of the procedure that happens with the cities where I serve as city attorney, that working with city staff, if they're with planning staff, they had the authority to administratively continue an item, and I understood from the context of our discussion that the item had been continued from the hearing that was scheduled concerning the petition for special use permit before the regular Board of Commissioners. I come to find out, as detailed in the application before you, that my understanding was incorrect. I've had extensive discussions with planning staff, and I completely understand it was just a misunderstanding, and I really appreciate their work on this as well. That's a little bit of background of where we're at. So there is a request for a rehearing. This matter was heard before the Board of Commissioners, but because I had an understanding that it was continued to another date, no information or evidence was provided from the applicant. The applicant was not there. I was not there. I did not know that I needed to be there to request the continuance. Again, completely a misunderstanding on my part. 30 days of the final decision, the standard for granting a rehearing is that only if the applicant can show the new evidence exists that was not available at the time of the hearing, okay? So before you is the response. We filed for an application for a rehearing. Legal counsel looked at it, and there was an understanding that there wasn't any evidence that wasn't available or couldn't have been presented to the Board of Commissioners at that hearing had we understood that we needed to be there and shown up and presented that evidence. And so based off of that determination, there was a determination that there was no new evidence that was provided or that could have been provided at that time. Before you tonight, and this is a technical interpretation, is that application of what is new appropriate? Okay. What we have before you is information that was contained within the staff report. A permit application was pulled for the installation of the sidewalk after the Planning Commission heard this originally. You may remember a few months ago hearing this item when it came up originally for the car lot. Sidewalk permit application was pulled. After the sidewalk permit application was pulled, not formal staking occurred, but there was a one-call flagging that came out on site to look to see where lines were located at. And then within the past week, despite my client's financial difficulties, they had not only engaged a contractor, but also paid half of the, I think it's $8,000 to install the sidewalk. They ended up borrowing out of their son's college fund and paid for half of the installation of the sidewalk. And I've got photos here. The next 5 photos will just show you that. This is all taken within the past week. They've moved dirt. Part of the issue on site, if you go to that site, there was not a sufficient foundation to build a sidewalk there, because the sidewalk will, technically there are plans that the sidewalk will go somewhere, but right now this is, as sometimes happens, a sidewalk to nowhere. And there wasn't a sufficient slope to build the sidewalk. And so that sidewalk, they had to create that, and they did that through the dirt compaction process. I also have a video, but I'm sparing you the video of the 45-second video. You guys don't have time for that tonight. But the crux of the issue is the client spent $4,000 within the past week to have the dirt installed. So there isn't any context, or if you look here, any restraint on what is new evidence. It says the rehearing will be granted only if the applicant can show that new evidence exists that was not available at the time of the hearing, okay? We see, without any restriction on what the word new means, that this is new evidence. This should allow us the opportunity to at least present to the Board of Commissioners, we're doing work on the sidewalk. If you looked back at staff's report, every other condition we had met. Despite financial difficulty, we're now complying, and after this, if the Board of Zoning Appeals allows us to have this rehearing, we will have the sidewalk all built before the Board of Commissioners hears this. So then we will have complied with every requirement that was suggested by staff. So we look at that and we see that as evidence that we've met with the requirements of the word new. The thing I would state, and this is from my background as a city attorney, if we had intended, or the code had intended for the context of new to be limited to evidence that was available at the time of the hearing or within the time of filing the appeal, that could have been stated, and if I were drafting, I would have stated that clearly. This evidence, this limitation of new evidence is defined as such. But here, the word new stands alone. The new evidence exists now, and it definitely was not available at the time of the hearing. So I think that's a legal justification for why for what you can do, or why we're asking you to do it. I'm always concerned, if I'm representing the government, about setting precedents, whether this is a good or a bad thing in the future. And again, I'm not your attorney. You have very competent legal counsel over there. I don't see that you're setting an inappropriate precedence here. All you're defining is what the word new is, and I think that a reasonable definition, if you're allowing for new evidence and for a rehearing to be had, is that new evidence exists at the time that you appear before the Board of Zoning Appeals that wasn't available to the governing body at that time. So I think that's a reasonable request. Finally, the final context of it, as you may aware, because I think I'm reaching the end of my time, my client has diligently been working since the original special use permit was issued 2 years back to find some other use for the property. And quite frankly, when this snag came up, I pleaded with my client to find literally anything else that we could do with this property. Can we redevelop it residentially? Can we sell it? Can we demolish it? What can we do? And the problem is if you look at the context of the neighborhood, and again, kudos to planning. I believe that the overall plan for the area and the improvements, the aesthetic improvements, will do wonders for that area, both now and in the future. But right now, and I did confirm this with city planning staff, there is a car lot next door that doesn't comply with any of the setbacks if you know the area. It's there and it's grandfathered in. It's not a special use permit issue. So that car lot will be there for the foreseeable future, if not 10, 15, 20 years from now. Across the street is a gun store. Again, nothing wrong with a gun store, but it just connotes the area that we're within. It is a residential area, but not along this thoroughfare on this main street. Trying to put a residence in the area, you'd have to put it next to an existing car lot, across the street from a gun store, and catty corner from an auto repair service that repairs used automobiles. Again, all laudable businesses, but it does kind of create a character for the area that we just can't overcome. Practically, like I said, this is not an ideal use. My client can't get it sold to anyone else. And also, one of the questions that was brought up during the first appeal, what is the recommended recourse here if we cannot get something, at least a rehearing or hopefully a reconsideration and approval for at least another year? We don't really have any recourse. It will just put my client out of business. He has absolutely no resources to repay the money that's on the lot. The lot will sell at some point, probably at a tax foreclosure sale or a bank foreclosure sale process. And as we have learned through the marketing of the property, without the ability to at least run a car lot by special use, even at just the, I think, less than $70,000 sale price for everything, from what I understand. You'll have to ask my client for confirmation. We can't find anybody to buy it, to do anything with it. So long term, I don't know what we can do with it if we can't move forward, and I definitely know that a decision of denial will send my client into bankruptcy. Thank you very much.
Any questions for the petitioner's representative? Yes, Commissioner Jones.
So, Mr. Parker, so in a nutshell then, you're asking about the interpretation of the code. You're attributing the current scenario to miscommunication, financial challenges of your client, and then is that why you're late in the process? Because we got information in our staff report that doesn't deal with all of what you said, so I don't want to make an assumption that you haven't relayed some of this to staff.
I had a very nice discussion with Mr. Richardson where I explained that we would be hoping to provide photographic evidence of this as new evidence. I also was able to leave a message for Mr. Waters, and then I also left a message for Mr. Moore about whether they would have firm input on what would be considered new evidence versus non-new evidence. I did receive an email back from Mr. Richardson, and for that reason, I wanted to wait until I heard from one of those three officially about what would be considered new evidence by the city. I did hear from Mr. Richardson by email, and when we discussed that it was likely that the city might take the position that's not how new should be interpreted, but I didn't receive anything formally confirming that was absolutely the interpretation, so I waited to provide that within the staff report. For additional staff comments to supplement the original appeal that I filed, but because I didn't receive that until after the deadline to submit, I did not submit that with this, and I elected to do it orally since that was the option I had.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Other questions for the petitioner? Yes, Patrick.
I just thought I might follow up on that. So it's the legal department's determination that the information presented after the planning commission does not constitute new evidence. The stipulation that the sidewalk should be put in was made actually 2 years ago with the original plan. So any information, whether it was presented in between the time of the planning commission and the full commission or after the full commission, we determined did not constitute new evidence because it was simply taking initial steps to do something that the applicant had been required to do 2 years ago. Then our position was also based on the term "not available," and whether or not it was not available, although the applicant and his attorney did not appear at the hearing, that information could have been presented. So this was not information that just suddenly came to light and had been discovered after the hearing. And we just think that with this ordinance, that it should be reserved for those rare cases where really brand new information comes about after a hearing that could have changed the commission's decision. And so that's what our determination was based on.
Questions for legal counsel? Commissioner Jones.
So Patrick, then, just to make sure I have that clear, so the interpretation then is not in line with what Mr. Parker is asking. So from your legal perspective, then, this case is somewhat, dead in the water.
Well, so this is an unusual ordinance. I give Mr. Parker credit for finding this ordinance, and my 10 plus years of working on these, I don't recall anyone else filing under this provision. So this is the only provision in the planning code that actually requires the legal department to make a decision. So what Mr. Parker is doing is actually appealing from the legal department's determination. So you have the right to make that decision whether or not we got it right. So he has his position and we have our position. So that's what you're deciding tonight.
Okay. Commissioner Miller.
So Patrick, so if we approve this, then what happens next? 'Cause then it would go back to the
He would go
process.
to the full commission, and
But-
they would rehear his request for a special use permit.
So basically, if we approve it, it just goes back to a rehearing.
Back to the
of-
full commission.
Doesn't approve anything besides that.
But let me ask you this question, Patrick. If we approve that, given your recommendation to us, then we would be basically running afoul of our legal expert.
You have the right to do that. I'm not.
Right.
I mean, I believe in our stance. I'm not gonna. I think we have the correct position, but you have the right to make the decision that you want to make. That is the determination of the legal department, is that this does not constitute new evidence within the meaning of the code.
Well,
But
and you are charged to make sure that we're right. That's why there's an appeal to you all, because, I mean, we have made mistakes. I mean, we're human, and that's why you all have the authority to say, we think there was a mistake here, let's correct that. Whether it's my interpretation, which normally it is, or the one of the legal department.
But legal counsel has determined that they haven't made a mistake. And so at this point, what we're doing, are we opening the door to future appeals?
Well,
And I'm seeing some heads nod in the audience, and I'm seeing some
So
grins.
here's really what, this is actually a very high standard, because in fact what Mr. Parker is asking you to do is to create a scenario by which someone can wait to see if they get denied before they take action to complete a stipulation. And that would allow any applicant at any time to say, I'm going to try and push the limits here, and even if I get denied, I'll apply for a rehearing and say I'm going to go back and do what they wanted me to do originally. That's not what the intent of this code was. The intent of this code was something is discovered that existed at the time of the hearing but wasn't presented through no fault of anyone else's. For instance, imagine that you denied a plan because there was no water on the site, and 2 weeks later, Public Works was doing records research and found an old water line that actually did exist on the site. It was information that existed. No one really had access to it. It was new and, you know, discovered by happenstance after the fact. It isn't to allow someone, and, you know, I've been working in codes for quite a while. This stipulation in this code language and the intent of that is not to allow a rehearing in every case just because you didn't get your way the first time. Okay, you didn't present the evidence that you could have presented. You didn't comply with the stipulation you could have complied with. This particular language is meant to almost never be used, because otherwise it would be abused by applicants along the way, saying we can push the limit, see if we get denied. Doesn't matter if we get denied, we'll apply for a rehearing, say we've got this new evidence, and then we'll get a rehearing and take our chances again. That's what is being advocated here, and that's not what the intent of this code provision is.
So the
And
answer
nor
to
is
my
it
short
the-
question of are we opening the door is yes.
Yes.
Thank you. That's the long answer. Now, going back to the case, is that the staff opinion, or, because I have not heard public comment?
I have more to say.
I'm sorry?
I will have other comment.
Okay, I'm going to go ahead and open up the public portion of the meeting.
Is it okay if I finish? I only had 30 seconds.
Okay.
Very quickly, again, it's a difficult point for my client because he doesn't have anything else he can do with it. We can, you know, if the decision is no, then his business will just go bankrupt, and the site will move towards some type of a foreclosure action. We can't find anyone else to take it over. The other thing that I would suggest is, you know, you've brought up a very good point about what would be the context and consideration of new, and how could you limit this so that it is only new evidence in this specific determination. Again, you've got legal counsel that advises you on this. I'm not legal counsel for the board, but I can tell you that if you're looking at this and you say, all right, I have an individual that is trying to comply even though there's financial difficulty, right, and trying to meet staff conditions, and I'd like to have the opportunity for the Board of Commissioners to take consideration of it.
But Mr. Parker, I'm going to interrupt you because first, you've gone over your 30 seconds that you asked before. And secondly, couldn't that compliance have been made long before now? Wasn't there 2 years given to bring this case into compliance before we came here this evening? I want a simple answer
Very
to a
simple.
simple question.
Yes.
Could it have been done?
Yes.
Yes, thank you.
Hey,
Okay, I'm going to open up the public portion of the meeting. No, you're done.
Well,
I'm
I
gonna
just
open
had,
up-
I
you're
had a
done.
suggestion about how to do this.
You're done. You're done. I'm going to open up the public portion of the meeting. Is there anyone in the audience that wants to speak in favor of or in opposition to this request for a rehearing? Seeing none, I will close the public portion of the meeting. I will get final staff comments.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So there are two parts of this. One is the conversation that Mr. Parker and I had the week of the Board of Commissioners meeting. Now, I will tell you that I am regularly asked by people, do I need to be at the meeting? Meaning either this meeting, if they're on consent, or if they're on consent at Board of Commissioners meeting. My answer is 100% always yes. The reason we were having the discussion with Mr. Parker that week was simply because we were not sure how many members of the Board of Commissioners would be there, and given the Planning Commission's recommendation of denial, they would need 8 votes to overturn that denial, and we did not know if that would be possible or not. The decision at that point in the week is completely up to the mayor whether we hold something over or not. I told Mr. Parker, this was after our regular agenda review on Monday, that he needed to appear at the meeting because we didn't know how many people would be there. Now, regardless of that, I would have told him to be there no matter what anyway, because a holdover at that point, once it's on the agenda, is not a staff decision. Once the agenda is published, I don't know any cities that allow the staff to take something off the agenda once it's published. That is a decision that's governed by the bylaws of the governing body. So, you know, I don't think it, you know, his first comment that this is based on a miscommunication, I think is completely unfair to what I told him that day. I told him he needed to be there because we didn't know how many people would be there. He would want to ask that it be held. In fact, I told him he would want to ask for it to be held over, even if we maybe only had 9 people there, because that would mean he would only be able to lose a vote or two, and his case would be lost. And he didn't come to the meeting that night. Ms. Parker was able to hear that conversation. It was on my speakerphone, and I'm very confident that Mr. Parker was directed to be at that meeting that night. So that's point number one. I think is very critical because he could have been there that night and was told to be there that night to present this case. And then I will just reiterate the reason we have this provision in the code, and it is to allow for some undiscovered evidence to be presented. Now, this is not undiscovered evidence. They were in the process of, at first Mr. Parker told me it had been staked for this, they were building this, it had been staked and ready to build. I went out there and it was utility flags. I mean, I would think that, he is a city attorney, represents cities, is very common knowledge what the difference between a survey stake is and a utility flag. And it was simply, they called one call. And he was trying to say that they were moving forward and getting ready to build this thing, and all they'd done is call one call. I mean, there are many points in this process where I feel like the information provided to me was, it wasn't the whole kit and caboodle about what was really going on there. And so I think you have Mr. Parker's error not being there. This code provision is for truly new evidence that did not exist and could not have been presented at the time of the hearing. And if you do approve the variance, you are opening it up for applicants to push through not complying with stipulations, risk denial, and then if they get denied, come back and say, I want a rehearing because I'll go ahead and do that. And that's not the way the government should work. I mean, we either have the stipulation and we approve it with the stipulation, they do that, or we modify those stipulations at Planning Commission or Board of Commissioners and we move forward. It shouldn't be one where we can say, oh, we don't like that till the end, and then if we get denied, we get say, oh, wait a minute, we do want to do that. We'll go back and we'll do that. And I think that's, I think that's where we are now. They did have 2 years to complete the stipulation. They objected to the stipulation at Planning Commission, and then once denied at Planning Commission, they simply called one call to make it look like they were making progress. And, I don't think that is, meets the standard that's on your screen right now. We'd recommend denial.
Questions for staff? Commissioner Miller.
Rob, I have two questions in a way, and I'm going to ask you the first. It should be quick. Now, I'm trying to go back to remember this one. They didn't own the property 2 years ago, right? Or did they? For the initial special use permit. I thought it was a sell, or am I confusing it with another one?
I think it was at least ownership was pending approval. I don't know if they owned it, but it was, I believe they had a contract, but you might ask Mr. Parker or the owner's actually here. You could ask them to be sure, because my recollection may not be correct in that.
Yes, I own the property. Yeah.
My other follow-up question is, if we deny this thing, I do agree with both of your takes on this. What happens after denial? Because what I'm afraid of is that property sitting vacant on a Merriam Lane we just redid, and a Merriam Lane that we've just spent a ton of money as a community on there. And I'm not applauding the way that any of this has gone down. I just tend to agree with them that I don't know what else can happen to that property.
Well, I'm in a little bit of an awkward position because I tend to agree with what you're saying. I don't necessarily want a vacant building. I don't know that would be vacant for long. I mean, they've got 9 months left until they could reapply. And so, there'll be a time where it will be vacant, but it's not like this is a 10-year vacancy sentence. It is they can't reapply. I don't know if they can't reapply or they can't be heard for a year after their previous denial. So, I know that's a tremendous hardship. The hard part for me is that I don't think that this is the owner's fault. that we're here right now, and I do have sympathy for that. But we're also responsible to give you what the code is and how the facts relate to what the code says.
So it could be heard again in September of next year, if the last hearing was August?
It could be, yeah, something like that, yes.
Okay. Commissioner Jones, do you have a comment?
Well, part of mine I did, but part of mine has been addressed because I agree with Patrick's interpretation, and he's our expert. I agree with it too, just in a layperson's reading of it. And so I was thinking about whether or not they could reapply, and I know that has to be after some time has passed, unfortunately, for the petitioner.
And when does the other current permit run out?
It's already expired.
Oh, it is. All right, Commissioner Miller.
This might be a question for Patrick more, but is there any way to waive that period? We made a motion to deny, but we say that we allow them to reapply next week. Just, I don't know if that's possible, just curiosity's sake.
Is that another BOZA application, Rob?
Well, it'd be a CPC application, wouldn't it? Just-
I mean, I think the only thing that the law prohibits is a use variance, and that's not a use variance. I don't know of any other prohibitions on what that would be. That's certainly not advertised as a possibility, but I don't know that.
I mean, are you suggesting a variance from the code requirement of a 1-year waiting period? Is that?
Yeah, I'm just saying, we're all sitting up here talking, we all have this feeling that we don't want this building to be vacant, I don't think. Is there an ability for us to waive the 1-year period and say, hey, we're gonna hear this in January, February, March, or whenever it comes back up? But it looks like, I agree, should have started this 2 years ago, but it looks like they're already doing work on the sidewalk and all that. Is there a way to maybe more so not make them wait till September?
But are we just
I mean,
changing one to achieve the same result of a rehearing?
Right.
You're asking for a rehearing in January or February is what you're asking for.
They'd have to reapply if they got it all done in that. I mean, they
And
would
have
have
a
to go
new
back
hearing.
through.
But then it would have to go back through the whole planning
Yeah,
process.
I mean, if we approve this, then it goes to a rehearing to the Board of Commissioners next week. I mean, if we do it this way, they've got to actually go back through, they got to do it the right way. They've got to get done the right way, you know. If the sidewalk's not done, then we're going to be even harder on them. But it just keeps them from having to sell the business, shut the doors, and everything else.
I would say we can look into that. That wasn't the request was brought tonight, so I don't think that's an action that the board can vote on tonight. But if the applicant wants to consider that, well, I mean, the best I can offer is that we'll look into it.
We've got to move on. The request is for a rehearing. We've heard from staff, we've heard from legal counsel, we've heard from the petitioner. At this point, I'm going to stand for a motion.
Move for denial.
And could you go ahead and state a reason for denial, Commissioner Neal?
Move for denial based on our city legal opinion.
And that the standard doesn't meet new evidence.
Standard doesn't meet new evidence.
All right, thank you. The motion is for denial. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Commissioner Ernst. Any discussion on motion for denial?
Yeah,
Commissioner
I still
Jones?
have a little bit of unreadiness, and just, I hate to belabor this, but I was listening to something Patrick said, so if, it sounded like maybe you thought there was something in connection with what Commissioner Miller asked that could be researched. And so my question is then, if we just had this, well, the rehearing come back, and I don't know that that's appropriate, but I just want to know if there's an opportunity, when you alluded to something else perhaps being researched, to hit the pause button to see if there's anything else could be done, because I am concerned about the vacant property potentially that we want to try to avoid.
Well, what I was offering was that if the applicant wanted to file a request for a variance to the code requirement that you have to wait a year to apply for a new permit, that we would look into whether that was something that could be properly brought in front of the Board of Zoning Appeals.
And I think that, I was just reading the provision, Patrick, and I believe that that is something that they could ask for an appeal regarding. There doesn't seem to be any part of the code that would prevent them
Can I just say this while Rob is looking? We don't want an exercise in futility. That's not what we're wanting. We just want to know if there's a legitimate way that there is another avenue that can be pursued legitimately without us being essentially at square one.
Right, and I'm happy to talk with Mr. Parker. We've talked a lot as this case has progressed and see what options might be available.
So then, given that, what would we have to do right now, from your perspective?
Well, the request before you is on the rehearing, so I think the vote needs to be specifically tied to the rehearing, and we can look into this other issue.
The petitioners has other avenues available to them which they can pursue.
Right.
Which does not need to be decided by this body.
Right, not tonight.
The question before us is on a notice of a rehearing. We can't fix everything. Other discussion on the motion for denial? Seeing none, roll call.
Ernst,
Aye.
Huey,
Aye.
Jones,
Aye.
Miller,
Aye.
Neal.
Aye.
Mr. Chairman, that motion to deny this appeal passes, 5 in favor and none opposed.
All right, thank you.
Mr. Chairman, we're going to move on to our next appeal, number 2354, John Abney for property at 8015 Jerome Avenue. Does any member of the board have any contact to disclose with regard to this case?
No.
All those for and against, please come to the front of the room.
Thank you. Good evening.
Hello, my name is John Abney. I live at 8015 Jerome. I'm petitioning to get a second auxiliary structure put in my backyard within the 1,000 square feet requirements. I already have a small shed up near the house that they determined was not part of the house because it's not connected in any way. So I'm petitioning to get a second auxiliary structure, which would be a garage to house a vehicle. It's going to be 18 foot wide by 30 foot long with a concrete driveway. The siding's going to be the same color, the same 5-inch structure that the house siding has. So it will basically look the same. It will have 2 windows on each side of the building, a man door and 1 garage door.
Okay, thank you. Are there any questions for the petitioner? Seeing none, we'll open up the public portion of the meeting. Is there anyone in the audience that wants to speak in favor of or in opposition to this request? Seeing none, we'll close the public portion of the meeting. We'll get staff comment.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We'd recommend approval.
Any questions for staff? Seeing none, we'll stand for a motion.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Motion approved by Commissioner Huey, seconded by Commissioner Jones. Any discussion? Seeing none, roll call.
Ernst,
Aye.
Huey,
Aye.
Jones,
Aye.
Miller,
Aye.
Neal.
Aye.
Mr. Chairman, that motion to approve this appeal, subject to the staff's comments and suggestions, passes, 5 in favor and none opposed.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Our next appeal is number 2355, Corb Maxwell with Polson LEPC for property at 11704 State Avenue. Does any member of the board have any contact to disclose with regard to this case?
No.
All those for and against, please come to the front of the room.
Good evening.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the commission. Have a short PowerPoint that I'm going to walk through very quickly as I recognize the late hour. We have a lot of items on the Planning Commission agenda as well. This presentation is pretty general, and then I'll get specifically into the, which one do I do? Do I do that? Is that a slideshow?
Mr. Maxwell,
Sorry.
could we get you to give your name and address? for the
Corb
record,
Maxwell, Polsinelli Law Firm, 48 West 48th Street,
Thank you.
Kansas City, Missouri. Sorry, guys. Sorry about that all. I have with me today also Jackie McClaskey, President of New Campus Development for the American Royal, and with me also our engineers from Continental Engineers and our architects from Gould Evans that will be here for the presentation. As I hope all know, this has been a very public process of the American Royal moving from Kansas City, Missouri, and our historic home in the West Bottoms to Western Wyandotte County, very close to the Speedway at approximately 118th Street and State Avenue in the northwest corner. We have purchased and closed on 127 acres in this location, 80 acres at the northeast corner of 118th and State, which used to be owned by 2 different Native American tribes. And then on the northwest corner of the property, we have approximately 45 acres that's shaded in blue. Our plan is to develop over 1 million square foot campus that will be the new home of agriculture all throughout the United States. Will be a very extensively used facility for agricultural pursuits, agricultural events. This 1 million square feet is made up of a large arena of approximately 330,000 square feet that will have up to 7,300 seats, an auxiliary arena of approximately 114,000 square feet, 2 barns, a large barn at 270,000 square feet, a small barn at 142,000 square feet, an education and welcome center, dirt storage and otherwise, and a major hotel complex. So this is a very major project consistent with the things that have been developed in the Village West area, including the Speedway, Sporting Kansas City, Nebraska Furniture Mart, Cabela's, and so on. We're excited about the project. As I think all know, this has been a long-time public-private partnership, and we are really happy to be working through this process with you tonight in your role as the Planning Commission. But before we get there, we've got a couple of items we need to put before you as a Board of Zoning Appeals. We have approximately 4 variances that are before you now, and I'm leaving it here on the site plan because I think it's the best place to be able to see what the variances are. We first have a front yard setback variance, and that front yard setback variance is we're supposed to have 50 feet and we only have 25 feet. We consider the front door of this facility being what we're calling American Royal Way. This American Royal Way will be a very active street. We need to build that street, create it. It obviously doesn't exist at this point, but we're planning that to be a festival ground. Parades will go down there if any have ever participated in the American Royal Parade. The back door of the facility will be down here where next to State Avenue. It will be nicely landscaped. There will be also detention here, but this is where we'll have to load animals and otherwise and be able to roll trucks in. So when you take the dynamics of this 1 million square feet, the loading facilities happening here, and wanting to have sort of a close relationship of our large arena right to American Royal Way, that's why we're asking for the committees and the Board of Zoning Appeals approval of that variance for a 25 feet setback. The second variance that we're asking for is for a side setback of 0. The reason for this is you've got the main American Royal complex here, you have our hotel here. They're going to be developed to work absolutely in coordination with each other, but one is an agricultural lot, one is a CP2 hotel lot, and so the variance is for a 0 setback, side yard setback, because those two things will be connected. We're then asking for a height variance. In your agricultural districts, you have a height under the code of 35 feet. We will have 115 feet over here on our hotel and up to 95 feet at our barns. And so we're asking for that 115-foot variance. I hope all of those are quite easy to understand. Of course, would answer any questions of the commission and of staff. I think one of the questions, though, that we've also brought forward that is a little bit different than other uses, but I think all of this is based on the type and kind of development we're talking about with the American Royal. While this is 1 million square feet of development and it will be of the highest class and order, let's remember what we are sort of looking to here and what we're building. We're building for agriculture. We're building for livestock shows. We're building for events that are part of our Kansas heritage and that we hope to expand and bring people in from the region. And so on the 45 acres that we have on the other side of 118th Street, we are generally developing this so that we both have a couple of outbuildings that will be for dirt storage for our facilities and for FF&E storage, seats and otherwise, but the balance of it will generally be excess and overflow parking. That excess and overflow parking is really principally focused on trailer parking, livestock parking, and otherwise that will be able to focus there. And we're asking, instead of paving all of that, that we think it will be more appropriate to be able to do that as grass parking with then overlay or asphalt millings through the drive aisles on that so that people can end up parking their trailers and otherwise there. We obviously have the best example of where that's happened in Wyandotte County, right across the street at the Speedway. But we will have higher usage than that. The usage will not be absolutely excessive, though. I think we put into the reports and otherwise when asked about these questions by staff that we could have up to 159 event days that would use that. And you first think 159 event days, oh my gosh, they're going to be using this every other day of the year. An event day, there is 750 event days that will happen at the American Royal facility, meaning sometimes you'll have 2 events, sometimes you'll have 5 events, sometimes you'll have 10 events happening at the facility. Each of those count as an individual event day. We really think the use of this property will only come in for major livestock shows, and that would be something on the order of 15 to 20 to maybe we stretch that some year of 30 days a year that that facility gets used. I recognize that's more than the Speedway at probably 8 or 9, but we're in the ballpark of talking about those same types of uses. We think it's appropriate for the area. We think it's appropriate for a generally agrarian use, although we recognize it has commercial components. And with that, we would of course stand for any questions of the commission and or your staff, but we very much look forward to bringing this to Wyandotte County and working to continue to extend all of the success that's happened in Village West and continue to move it further west into the county. With that, Mr. Chairman, I'll stand for any questions and apologize for going over and spending so much time when I said I'd be really short.
That's all right, thank you. Any questions for the petitioner? Okay, we're going to go ahead and open up the public portion of the meeting. Is there anyone in the audience that wants to speak in favor of or in opposition to this request? Okay, seeing none, we'll close the public portion of the meeting. We'll get staff comment.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think Corb assessed this correctly. The real issue is the drive aisles and the parking. And typically what we do, like in an industrial area where they're going to have lay down yard, is we have them pave the drive aisle and use millings where they're going to lay stuff down. Their documentation does make it appear that it would be used significantly more than what Mr. Corb has described here. If it is just 30 days a year maximum in the best year they could imagine, then I think his proposal is reasonable. I would want to modify that to say that some portion of the main drive needs to be actually paved so that any debris gets off of that, on their property. They clean it up before it gets onto the public road. And I would like to leave that to a determination with Public Works about how deep that needs to be to get all the mud and millings and stuff off of the tires before they come out. But that would just be one aisle, the main aisle, that would have to be done that way to some degree. So with that modification, I'd recommend approval, subject to the stipulations in the staff report, noting that the drive aisles will be millings, except for a portion of the main aisle to be determined by Public Works necessary to make sure that millings and mud, et cetera, don't end up on the public street.
And all of these variances can be taken at one time, is that correct?
Yes.
All right. Questions for staff? Seeing none, I'll entertain a motion.
Motion to approve with the additional stipulations.
Thank you. Motion to approve made by Commissioner Jones. Is there a seconded by Commissioner Huey? Any discussion? Seeing none, roll call.
Ernst,
Aye.
Huey,
Aye.
Jones,
Aye.
Miller,
Aye.
Neal.
Aye.
Mr. Chairman, that appeal passes 5-0, subject to the staff's revised comments and suggestions.
Thank you.
Takes us to our next appeal, number 2356, Fred Del Toro, for property at 3447 North 31st Terrace. Does any member of the board have any contact to disclose with regard to this case?
No.
All those for and against, please come to the front of the room.
Good evening. Go ahead and give us your name and address and tell us about your project.
My name is Fred Del Toro. The address is 3447 North 31st Street Terrace. Requesting a variance to construct a horse shed, and I provided some drawings. And I believe the other portion of is to keep the horse and that property.
So this is just the variance on the stable on the vacant lot. So this is a variance to have an accessory structure without a primary, and then the rest of the case will be dealt with during the planning commission meeting.
Is that it for you? Okay, great. Yes. Thank you. Is there anyone in the audience that wants to speak in favor of or in opposition to this request? Yes, sir. Please come forward and give us your name and address.
Good evening, and thank you very much. My name is Marvin S. Robinson II. My address, 713 Lafayette Avenue, KCK 66101. This is not what I intended to do today. And I wrote up a whole lot of stuff, but February 2017, the unified government agreed to pursue a time constraint grant for $20,000 from the U.S. Department of Interior to go through the Kansas State Historic Society that had already been pre-approved and on a registry to do the application for the nomination of the Quindaro Historic Site for a National Historic Landmark. There was also $37,000 in-kind contribution. That consultant was selected, the application's in. People from the Smithsonian Institute, the Department of Interior, scholars, professors have visited the site, and one of the things that drove them crazy about the site at Quindaro was that it had been not put in any construction or modern development, making it pristine to the rest of the country. And you're looking at the clock. I wanted to fast forward and say that that National Historic Landmark application is being vetted and reviewed by the National Park Service in Washington, D.C. and New York, that the city was kind enough to accept the $20,000 and provide support for the in-kind contributions from the Wyandotte County Historic Society, the Kansas State Historic Society, the city-county archival collection. 12 December 2018, U.S. Senator Pat Roberts testified before the committee in Washington, D.C. on behalf of the Quindaro Town Site becoming a National Historic Landmark and or a National Commemorative Site. 12 March 2019, the Quindaro Site is acknowledged and given recognition from a lot of different circles across the country as being one of the key points of the national, the public lands package, the largest preservation of public lands in the entire country. People have tried since May of 1921 to try to get the Quindaro site preserved as a historic district. April 2019, we had two Democrats, distinguished members of the United States House of Representatives, Sharice Davids and Congressman Emanuel Cleaver from Missouri, our own distinguished United States Senator Pat Roberts and former Congressman Kevin Yoder over 220 people showed up to the debriefing for the National Commemorative Site at the Quindaro Free Port of Entry. Shutter, which is online, to order one photo is $4.99, I believe. It costs $499 to just get a photo of the dedication that took place. I'm really, really nervous because I used to come here all the time about different things. This is not what I had intended to do this evening
That's
at all.
okay. Can you tell us what you're talking about is going to impact this case, though, correct?
Right. The site was included in the Project 1619 as one of the most important spaces in the United States in the 400 years of the African American experience.
Mr. Robinson, excuse me, you have 1 minute left.
So you're talking about this parcel of land?
The USA Today included Quindaro in their special edition, the 17th of October, as where slavery began to die. And no one wants to be on the wrong side of history. And they mentioned both Kansas and Quindaro. When you go into the cemetery, whoever is responsible has done something to the water table that the water is as high as the road. And I know you said I have 1 minute. But the road is being eradicated or eroded because of the construction of the pipeline. Phillips 66 says they want to work with the people, but they have these chickens over there in a tub, and it takes away from the serenity of a historic site. We never had this before. They had horses up there, but now the site is being hit with water on the side on one, and they have a little bridge overpass. And then they've knocked over the railing going to the cemetery. And some of the people asked me to hurry up and do something because we always lose people in the winter. Some of their whole families, 20 and 30 people in one family, are buried there. They knocked over the Civil War soldier marker. They knocked over World War II soldier markers.
When you say they, who are you saying?
The Phillips 66 pipeline.
And how does that impact this?
Because when you go into the site, you have all this.
You're talking about this gentleman's site that wants to build.
Yeah, you have these chicken crates and tubs and water hoses, and the water table from the creek is standing right there at level with the road. And so I'm saying that when we're trying to do what we're trying to do, other people doing what they're trying to do. We just had John Brown. They cut off John Brown's hand and the scroll, right? It made national news. It made international news. And then we have somebody, I'm looking today and I'm like, oh my God, they're having a meeting about the creek. How much more can the site withstand while it's being reviewed and vetted for a National Historic Landmark? And I would ask that you not allow the creek to overtake the road, because people won't have nowhere else to go and visit their loved ones or for their burials. My family's not buried there, but it just seemed like to me there should be, the cities and the county, when they did this charter for the unified government, that one of the first things they said would be to preserve the historic diversity inside the community. And it's not being, when you do new things like.
I'm going to interrupt you because I'm completely lost. Are you speaking in opposition to this gentleman building a stable on this property?
Okay, if I said absolutely yes, I don't think we need to do nothing else while we're trying to figure out the repair of the road and get the cemetery fixed up and the creek that they have done something to.
Who you're talking about Phillips? You're not talking about this gentleman?
The creek, the water from the.
Okay, but I kind of need you to stay on point and talk about this gentleman's parcel with the stable and how that impacts all the other things that you've been talking about. You've thrown a lot at us, which I appreciate, and I appreciate the information, but I need to know how this gentleman building a stable impacts all of that and why you're opposed to him building a stable.
Any new activity that goes on with the site is supposed to go before the Department of Interior while they're reviewing to make sure that it fits the contour of a National Historic Landmark. And when people just pop up and projects just pop up, that helps to diminish the importance of one of the largest, most important.
Okay, we're going to find
spaces
out
in
if
the
this
country.
project is subject to that, so.
I can't thank you enough.
Okay, no problem. Thank you. Is there anyone else that would like to speak in favor or in opposition?
I do want to just say this, that the people should be allowed to rest in peace when they're buried.
I agree.
And so
Thank you.
that's all.
Yes, sir. Give us your name and address for the record, and let me know if you're in opposition or if you're in favor of the stable being built.
Michael Canada, Kansas City, Missouri, 64123.
Your address, please.
414 North Lawndale.
All right, thank you.
I'm opposed to it at this given point, just because of, like Marvin was saying, some of the other properties I want to say that there's 2 properties assigned to this individual, and I might be wrong on that. On the other side of the road, they have a lot of chickens in individual crates, which I have some images of, that might be kosher if they are heritage breeds, but I'm not 100% sure what the breeds of the chickens are. Also, running horses on that site right now might not be conducive to what we're trying to preserve on that site from a historical standpoint. Plus the fact that the Brownfield study just recently studied a parcel close to there, that they did find some contamination in the soil, and they're still doing an ongoing EPA review of the soil in that given area for more contamination and the extent of the contamination. So it might not be conducive to having livestock there, period, until that study is done.
Okay. Anything else for us?
There's one other point that several people have brought up to me that are from the community that could not be here tonight, was that the slaves actually came up that road. And additional trailer traffic or vehicle traffic on that road that abuts that piece of property, like getting horses in or out, could tear up the road even more. The road is not stable right now.
Okay.
It is subject to washouts as it is, and there's almost always water running down the road.
So roads, EPA, and types of chicken.
Yeah,
Okay. Anything else?
that's about it.
All right, thank you. We'll try to get you some answers. Okay, anyone else want to speak in favor of or in opposition to? Yes, sir. Please come to the mic. Good evening. Your name and
evening.
address for the record, please.
My name is Steve Collins. I live at 14126 Leavenworth Road, Basehor, Kansas. I just want to point out that for the last 18 months, a gate has not been operable in the west entrance to the ruins right off the northeast corner of Quindaro Park. I started working at the ruins in 2001. I was at that time a teacher at the Kansas City, Kansas Community College, and I represented the college in a collaboration with the African Methodist Episcopal Church, 5th District, and the United Government of Wyandotte County, Kansas City, Kansas. And during that entire time, and even, I believe, from 1998 up to about the middle of, or late 2017, that gate was always locked. And the gate is open now and has been for the last 18 months. There is no real protection for the ruins. And I want to point out that the ruins there are very unique in the United States and in Kansas, in that it's a site of a cluster of Underground Railroad stations. I won't get into the details of that, but it's extremely important, and it's unprotected now. Also, I bear no personal animosity to the property owners on either side, but the context of the historical significance of this property is not enhanced by agricultural activity right at the entrance to the road that will take you right down to the brewery building, which was stabilized and is extremely important in that 1857 town. I just wanted to make those points.
Okay, thank you very much. Anyone else? Okay, we will go ahead and close the public portion of the meeting. We'll get staff comment and try to get some clarification on a couple of these historic issues.
So, in general, this is the area of the old Quindaro City. The overlook is right here, and then the ruins are kind of scattered in this area. I'm not sure the exact location of the cemetery, but I believe that they're referencing that this is the old road that people used to use to get to Quindaro. And then Mr. Del Toro has properties on both sides. And the stable would be built on the southeast side right here. And then I believe the pictures of the chickens that you were provided were over here. This is a very low-intensity use. And I don't want to do anything that's going to mess up the ruins, but the appeal is for a very small structure. It's in your staff report. And then the accompanying special use permit has a time frame associated with it. But the folks that testified here today are really our experts on the Quindaro ruins, and I don't want to make any missteps along that path. So I think I'm going to recommend that we hold this over for a month so that I can do a better job of answering the details of the questions, because I'm a little bit lost as well. I couldn't find the map online. I didn't realize this was going to be a question, because I've always, thought about this of entering off of 27th Street and not off of 31st. So that's a mistake on my part, and I think we need to really figure this out before we take action on either of these cases tonight. So I recommend that we hold these over to the January 13th Board of Zoning Appeals, and we'll have to make a motion during the Planning Commission meeting on the other case.
Okay, questions for staff?
I don't have a question, but I have a comment, because if Rob had not made the statement that he just made, I'm in support of what he just said wholeheartedly. And Janet, I need to go back. I've not had to do this before and modify the record, because I didn't realize the situation. I had a conversation with Commissioner Townsend about some of her constituents having gotten with her and trouble connecting the dots with what the impact is. Okay, now I know a little bit more clearly, but I would wholeheartedly agree this requires some research, because if we got historical preservation of something that significant, we would be way remiss in not doing due diligence and the necessary research to get this figured out.
Okay, thank you. Any additional questions for staff? The recommendation from staff is to hold over till the January 13th meeting. If there is none, I'll entertain a motion.
Motion to approve the holdover.
Second.
So you're making a motion for holdover?
Yes.
There was,
Yes.
okay. So the motion is for a holdover to the January 13th meeting, made by Commissioner Jones, seconded by Commissioner Neal. Any discussion for motion to hold over? Seeing none, roll call, please.
Ernst?
Aye.
Huey?
Aye.
Jones?
Aye.
Miller?
Aye.
Neal?
Aye.
Mr. Chairman, that motion to hold over this application until the January 13th meeting for the staff to do further research passes, 5 in favor and none opposed.
Okay, thank you.
And, Mr. Chairman, since this appeal is being held over, the 2 special use permits, I just want to verify with Rob, the 2 special use permits will not be heard tonight.
Correct, thank you.
Okay.
And the last case?
And our last case is appeal number 2357, Ladina, Washington, for property at 9151 Parallel Parkway. Does any member of the board have any contact to disclose with regard to this case?
No.
All those for and against, please come to the front of the room.
Good evening.
Hi,
Give us your name and address for the record. Tell us about your project.
Ladina, Washington, 9151 Parallel Parkway. I'm here to request a parking variance. We have met with the planning, and for the property, as you can see, they're requiring us to have 20 off-street parking spaces, and we had 5 there. We went ahead and not only increased the parking, but we put an entire street, and we sent those, the architect sent those over to the Planning Commission. So the new plan now has a street that goes through it, so that as the parents drop them off, they'll be able to come in. It also has a roundabout turn in it to allow them to flow freely through there and go back out to Parallel. The new parking, the driveway just alone can accommodate about 20 cars itself. And so those pictures have already been sent to the Planning Commission.
Okay, do we have the revised drawings and things?
I believe it's on page 10 of your staff report.
Okay, thank you. Any questions for the petitioner? Okay, seeing none, we'll open up the public portion of the meeting. Is there anyone in the audience who wants to speak in favor of or in opposition to this project?
Yes.
Yes, sir. Give us your name and address for the record, please.
My name is Huey Clay, 9110 Garfield Avenue, which my residence is the one that abuts right at the road that's shown for the imaging center.
Okay.
Okay. And this was first we heard that there was a daycare to be, built there. And one of my problems I have about this overall is why put a daycare right abutting residential area? Okay? There's noise. We already are faced with noise from the soccer field on 90th Street. We also get noise from the race when it's going on, and we get noise from the soccer field, which is on 90th Street. So taking a daycare and putting it there, I don't know why anybody would want to consider put that right against a community or subdivision there. Okay? Now, as far as I wish I could see a plan that you had for that road.
Sir, I need you to address me, sir.
Oh, I was just talking.
That's okay.
But anyway, do you have that?
Do we have a plan? Well, yeah, we'll get you one.
Okay. Because at present, we have one entrance up to the Oak Ridge residential area, and that's 92nd Terrace. Okay? That's just on the west side of the diagnostic center there. So we have cars coming in and making that as a turnaround going up 92nd Terrace, back behind the imaging center or diagnostic center, and back out to Parallel. Just this evening, the traffic that hits Parallel usage, my neighbor and his wife and I left at the same time, and we waited probably 4 minutes at 5:30 to be able to make a left-hand turn going west to get to 435. And so you take a daycare and put it there, and you're asking for 20 parking spaces. I have no clue if this daycare is going to take kids in after school, which could mean more traffic to be brought in. Well, what happens here is I can see a potential for them to be circling the imaging center and then just the exit out of there. Because I've almost been hit at 92nd, and the cars are going west, and there's a light down there at 90th Street, and a truck was on me in no time. So you put anything else closer to those lights, I see a problem. Now, the other problem about this is you've got a new elementary school being built on 91st Street, okay? Think about the traffic that that's going to bring. I don't know how you can expect people to be able to get out of the daycare center with all of that congestion we have at that corner because of the offset from 90th Street to 91st Street, where the elementary school is being built. Okay, so I think the overall it'd be nice for everyone to need much the daycare center because I can see a lot of problems on traffic that's going to be there. Now I'm concerned. I have 3 lots. The one my house is on, have one to the west and one to the east. So I see a daycare center is devaluating my property big time. And I've spoke to some other neighbors. They have a problem about that, and they can speak for themselves in a few minutes. But the overall planning to put, I want to point out another thing. About 2 years ago, there was a pastor came by. I was out mowing my yard, and he was upset because he wasn't specific which lot it was of those 2 parallel lots, the one to the east there too that shows the trees there. But he was denied use of that to put a church on one of those lots, said because the city would not allow them to have an access or easement into that property. Now, I think if it was been a church, and if you're giving an okay to get a road into this daycare center, I'd much rather it had a church there than a daycare, just like the imaging. You hardly know they're there. People just come and go, a light load of traffic all through the day. But a daycare is a different traffic flow. I personally believe you should have a traffic study done to find out what you're getting into. And when you hear that we're now getting the American Royal out there by the Legends area, New Menards, traffic is something else on Parallel Street. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Okay, seeing none, we'll close the public portion of the meeting. We'll get staff comment.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Public Works has looked at this and didn't see any significant traffic issues. Obviously, some of our arterial streets are busy, and making left-hand turns can be an issue. You may have to wait. It might be easier to turn right and go around the block, the big block, down to State and back around. But I was not made aware of any significant traffic concerns. They are So they are going to put the driveway adjacent to the property line here and then bulb that across and make this more of a single access point. We can't really deny this property access. That would make it undevelopable, and that would be a taking of their property, so we have to provide them access unless we feel so strongly about it that we would want to buy that property, which I don't think we want to do. Otherwise, with the exception of the parking, obviously in the staff report, there's a lot of requirements they have to meet during plan review process. But with that stated, we'd recommend approval.
Just one question, Rob. So there'll be another drive that will be built next to the existing one that's currently there?
Correct. And
Diagnosis Center.
this drive is very lightly traveled. It only serves the imaging center in that building, and I happen to have been there today for an X-ray.
Okay.
But that's. Sir, you're out. Sir, we're.
But is that a private drive?
Yes, this is a private drive, and we can't force access to that. We'll work to try and facilitate.
So they have to have their own and dedicated.
We'll work to try and facilitate that, but I think that it's most likely that this will just kind of be rounded off there, and there'll be a larger curb cut there.
And what about the parcel next to it? Was there an issue with that parcel next to it being denied access?
I believe that they're talking about this parcel, but I'm not aware of that particular case.
Okay. Questions for staff? Seeing none, I'll entertain a motion.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Motion to approve by Commissioner Huey, seconded by Commissioner Miller. Discussion? Seeing none, roll call.
Ernst,
Aye.
Huey,
Aye.
Jones,
Aye.
Miller,
Aye.
Neal.
Aye.
Mr. Chairman, that motion to approve this appeal, subject to the staff's comments and suggestions, passes 5 in favor and none opposed.
Okay, thank you. That concludes the agenda for the Board of Zoning Appeals. Our 30-minute meeting has lasted over 2 hours. We are going to take a 10-minute break, and we will convene the Planning Commission. Thank you. Patrick? Commission meeting to order. Ms. Parker will read the opening statement. Thank you all for your patience.
Mr. Chairman, before I read the opening statement, since we held over the appeal at the Board of Zoning Appeals meeting, we need to take action to hold over SP 2019-117 and SP 2019-118. And if we just get a motion and then a voice vote, that would be great.
And Janet, can we go ahead and ask, is there anyone here that was wanting to speak again on a vacation of an easement 2019-14? Because we do not have enough people to hear that one, because we'll have to have one member that was going to recuse, so that one will be held over until January. So if there's anybody here that wanted to hear that case or speak to it, it won't be heard this evening.
So we actually will need to have a motion to hold over all three of those applications.
I make a motion to hold over 2019-117, 2019-118, as well as UE 2019-14.
Second.
Okay, motion to hold over on those three cases. Any discussion? Moved and seconded by
Well,
Jones,
Tom,
seconded by Commissioner Miller.
If I might, James, you want to, I think you need to be in the attorney's seat for Patrick if he's not here. But if we have a lack of a quorum due to somebody having to recuse themselves, I think we can still take action on the UE case. We can make a quorum if if somebody has to recuse, and that's all the people that are here. I think we can still do that. But I would rather take that with it and let it be reviewed by legal later. Go to the Board of Commissioners and wait on that one.
Which one?
UE 114.
Okay, but I don't think the person who's going to present it's going to be here. Well, we'll get it.
Let's act on that. Let's not necessarily hold that one over right away.
Okay, all right. So we'll remove that one from the motion if that's okay with the maker of the motion. And motion to hold over for the other two. Any discussion? Seeing none, roll call.
You just take a voice. Paul, please.
Sorry?
Just like an all in favor.
Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? All right, let's go.
We would like to welcome all present to the meeting of the City Planning Commission. Mr. Jeff Carson is serving as chairman this evening. The Planning Commission is a voluntary body of citizens which review each zoning proposal. For all change of zones, special use permits, vacations, and preliminary plan reviews on tonight's agenda, the Planning Commission makes recommendations to the Unified Government Board of Commissioners, who will then make the final decisions on Thursday, January 9, 2020. For final plats and final plan reviews heard tonight, the Planning Commission's decision is final, and there will not be another hearing. For the format for this evening's meeting is as follows. As each application is called, we would ask that all those, both for and against, to please come to the front of the room. The applicant will make the opening statement explaining the proposal. Please note that the applicant will be given 15 minutes to present their case. The 15 minutes includes the applicant, consultants, and other members of the applicant's team. Members of the Planning Commission will then address any questions they may have to the applicant. Any persons wishing to speak in favor will be allowed to do so at that time. Then those persons in opposition will be allowed to make their statements and ask questions. Please note that each member of the public who wishes to speak will be given 5 minutes to express their opinions. Time may not be shared between speakers. A speaker at the podium may request to extend their time, and the Planning Commission may, by 2/3 majority vote, extend any speaker's time in 5-minute increments. The applicant will then answer questions and make a closing statement. The public hearing portion of the meeting will be closed, and the public will only be allowed to address the Commission if a question is directed to them. The Planning Commission will discuss the application and make their recommendation. Also, all items or exhibits submitted and/or shown either to the Planning Commission or staff during the hearing will be retained and become part of the official record of these proceedings. If persons in opposition want to formally protest a change of zone or special use permit, a means is available by a legal protest petition, which can be obtained along with the necessary instructions by calling the Urban Planning and Land Use Department at 573-5750 tomorrow morning. Any application receiving a unanimous vote of recommendation by the Planning Commission will appear on the consent agenda of the Unified Government Board of Commissioners. Unless there is a request to remove an item from the consent agenda by the applicant, a member of the Unified Government Commission, or other interested parties, the Planning Commission's recommendation will be adopted. The consent agenda is heard at the beginning of the meeting at 7 p.m. If you are interested in an item, you should appear promptly on January 9, 2020 at 7 p.m. to see what action is taken or to ask that it be removed from the consent agenda. The Planning Commission will also have a consent agenda as part of their meeting this evening. The consent agenda is the first part of the agenda. Items on the consent agenda are final plats, final plans, or special use permit renewals that have received a staff recommendation to approve. Unless there is a request to remove an item from the consent agenda by the applicant, a member of the staff, a member of the Planning Commission, or other interested parties, the staff recommendation on all of the items on the consent agenda will be adopted by the Planning Commission at one time. I will read a list of agenda items on the consent agenda, and when I have completed the list, Chairman will ask if there are any requests to remove items. This is your time to come to the microphone and request that an item be removed from the consent agenda if you do not agree with the staff recommendation. All items not removed from the consent agenda will be approved by the Commission with the staff recommendation. The Planning Commission is required to disclose contacts about any item on the Planning Commission agenda. Before each item, I will ask if any contacts have been made, and members of the Commission will be asked to disclose those contacts at that time. We appreciate the attendance of those here this evening, and we recognize the seriousness of each case and each person's opinions, but would like to request that each side keep their comments as concise as possible. Your opinions will be forwarded to the governing body for their consideration in making a final decision. In addition, those who received notices for this evening's hearing will again receive them for the hearing on Thursday, January 9, 2020. We ask that anyone with a cell phone to please turn them off or switch to non-audio so you will not disturb the meeting. I will now read the items on the consent agenda. Consideration of the November 12, 2019 City Planning Commission minutes. Special Use Permit SP 2019-76, Mr. Kasim, renewal of a special use permit for vehicle repair and body shop at 744 Kansas Avenue. Beverly Hills final plat for one lot at 4110 North 71st Terrace. Wolcott WWTP, final plat for one lot at 9407 Main Street. Plan review application PR 2019-29, Kurt Winters with UG Water Pollution Control Department. Final plan review for upgrades to the facility at 9407 Main Street. The items I have just read are on the consent agenda. At this time, does any member of the Commission have any contact to disclose with regard to any of these items? Please include the following items as part of the record for all of the items on the consent agenda. The city's currently adopted zoning and subdivision regulations, the official zoning map for the area in question, the city's currently adopted master plan for the area in question, the staff report and attachments dated December 9, 2019, the application and other documents, plans, pictures, and maps submitted by the applicant in furtherance of the case and contained in the official file, the publication in the Echo for the special use permit, and the notices to property owners. The Commission will vote to approve in one vote these items unless someone comes forward and asks that an item be removed from the consent agenda.
Is there anyone in the audience that would like to have anything removed from the consent agenda for special consideration this evening? Okay, seeing none, is there anyone on the commission that would like to have anything removed from consent? Okay, seeing none, I'll stand for a motion to approve the consent agenda.
Move to approve consent agenda.
Second.
Motion to approve consent made by Commissioner Neal, seconded by Commissioner Huey. Any discussion? Seeing none, roll call.
Ernst,
Aye.
Huey,
Aye.
Jones,
Aye.
Miller,
Aye.
Neal.
Aye.
Mr. Chairman, that motion to approve the items on the consent agenda with the staff's recommendations passes 5 in favor and none opposed.
Thank you.
And Mr. Chairman, SP 2019-76 will go to the Board of Commissioners on Thursday, January 9th, 2020 at 7 p.m.
Thank you.
That now completes the consent agenda, and we will now move on to the non-consent agenda. The Commission would request that when an applicant hears their application being called, that they move forward to the microphone, along with all those for and against, in order to keep the meeting moving. Mr. Chairman, we have 5 items we're going to hear together, and I'm going to read them in the order that we will vote on them. Each one will be voted on separately. Master Plan Amendment MP 2019-6, Corb Maxwell with Polsonelli PC. Master Plan Amendment from Planned Commercial and Business Park to Commercial and Entertainment at 1620 North 118th Street and 11602 and 11704 State Avenue. Change of zone application 3210. Change of zone from AG Agriculture District to CP2 Planned General Business District for the American Royal Hotel at 11704 State Avenue. Special use permit application SP 2019-116. Special use permit for American Royal Events and Amenities at 1620 North 118th Street and 11602 and 11704 State Avenue. American Royal preliminary plat for 3 lots at the same addresses, and plan review application PR 2019-28, preliminary plan review for American Royal Events and Amenities at the same addresses. Please include the following items as part of the record for this case: the city's currently adopted zoning and subdivision regulations, the official zoning map for the area in question, the city's currently adopted master plan for the area in question, the staff report and attachments dated December 9, 2019, the application and other documents, plans, pictures, and maps submitted by the applicant in furtherance of the case and contained in the official file, the notice in the Wyandotte Echo dated November 14, 2019 for the change of zone, master plan amendment, and special use permit, the notices to property owners dated November 13, 2019, and the testimony from the Board of Zoning Appeals meeting this evening. At this time, does any member of the commission have any contact to disclose with regard to this case?
No.
All those for and against, please come to the front of the room.
Hello.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the commission. Corb Maxwell, Polsonelli Law Firm, 900 West 48th Street, Kansas City, Missouri. We're going to be able to hopefully pick up a little time, and that's why I spent a short amount of time going through the presentation when we were part of the Board of Zoning Appeals, or sitting as the Board of Zoning Appeals. With that, I would just ask that the record from the Board of Zoning Appeals be incorporated into the record here tonight. Note that I have reviewed all of the staff reports. We agree with all of the staff reports. The American Royal team, our engineering team, and our architecture team is still here and is available to answer any questions that the Planning Commission would have or any questions of staff. The only item that I would bring to the Commission's attention, and I hope this is a friendly amendment, is that when I read the staff stipulations 1 through 6, we are agreeable. We'll always work with staff, but if you look towards stipulation 5, it says, allow American Royal Way and the site plan as a whole to shift up to 100 feet as necessary to align and make both parties on either side of the street amenable to its placement. I would ask that be corrected to 150 feet. Because of just sort of the curvature of the road, there is a place where it could be 150 feet. Obviously, our next door neighbor would have to agree to this. It's not a taking or eminent domain or anything like that. It would all have to be agreeable between the parties. We're just asking for that additional flexibility. With that, Mr. Chairman, we have reviewed all the reports, and we would stand only for any questions and would ask this commission for approval of the multiple items we have in front of you.
Thank you. Any questions for the, excuse me, any questions for the petitioner? Okay, seeing none, we will open the public portion of the meeting. Anyone in the audience want to speak in favor of or in opposition to this project? Okay, seeing none, we'll close the public portion of the meeting. We'll get staff comment.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I agree with the amendment of stipulation 5 from 100 feet to 150 feet. And with that, we'd recommend approval of the various applications. I would request that you start with the master plan, go to the change of zone, special use permit, and then either plat or plan review.
Okay, and so the 150 feet change is on the master plan amendment, correct?
All the stipulations apply across the board.
Okay.
but, it's on stipulation 5, and that's located on page 14 of your staff report.
Okay, thank you. Any questions for staff? Seeing none, entertain a motion.
Move to approve the master plan, subject to the amended stipulations,
Thank you.
amended staff stipulations.
Second.
Motion to approve the master plan amendment made by Commissioner Miller, seconded by Commissioner Huey. Any discussion? Seeing none, roll call.
Ernst,
Aye.
Huey,
Aye.
Jones,
Aye.
Miller,
Aye.
Neal.
Aye.
Mr. Chairman, that motion to recommend approval of the master plan amendment passes 5 in favor and none opposed.
Okay, now I'll entertain a motion on the change of zone.
Move to approve the change of zone, subject to the staff stipulations and suggestions.
Second.
Motion to approve change of zone made by Commissioner Miller, seconded by Commissioner Neal. Any discussion? Seeing none, roll call.
Ernst,
Aye.
Huey,
Aye.
Jones,
Aye.
Miller,
Aye.
Neal.
Aye.
Mr. Chairman, that motion to recommend approval of the change of zone application, subject to the revised stipulations, passes 5 in favor and none opposed.
Okay, and now the special use permit.
Move to approve the special use permit, subject to the staff stipulations.
Second.
Motion to approve special use permit made by Commissioner Miller, seconded by Commissioner Huey. Any discussion? Seeing none, roll call.
Ernst,
Aye.
Huey,
Aye.
Jones,
Aye.
Miller,
Aye.
Neal.
Aye.
Mr. Chairman, that motion to recommend approval of SP 2019-116, subject to the revised staff comments, passes 5 in favor and none opposed.
Okay, and now for the preliminary plat approval.
Move to approve the preliminary plat, subject to the revised staff stipulations and suggestions.
Second.
Motion to approve preliminary plat made by Commissioner Miller, seconded by Commissioner Huey. Discussion? Seeing none, roll call.
Ernst,
Aye.
Huey,
Aye.
Jones,
Aye.
Miller,
Aye.
Neal.
Aye.
Mr. Chairman, that motion to approve the preliminary plat, subject to the revised stipulations and comments, passes 5 in favor and none opposed.
Thank you. And plan review.
Move to approve the plan review, subject to the revised staff stipulations and suggestions.
Second.
Motion to approve plan review made by Commissioner Miller, seconded by Commissioner Huey. Discussion? Seeing none, roll call.
Ernst,
Aye.
Huey,
Aye.
Jones,
Aye.
Miller,
Aye.
Neal.
Aye.
Mr. Chairman, that motion to recommend approval of the plan review application, subject to the revised stipulations and comments, passes 5 in favor and none opposed.
Thank you. These will all be heard again on January 9th at 7 p.m. in this room. Thank you all for being here.
Mr. Chairman, our next application is special use permit application SP 2019-97, Damon Downs with Downs Trucking Company. Special use permit to park 2 heavy dump trucks on vacant residential property overnight at 4510 Parkview Avenue. Please include the following items as part of the record for this case: the city's currently adopted zoning and subdivision regulations, the official zoning map for the area in question, the city's currently adopted master plan for the area in question, the staff report and attachments dated December 9, 2019, the application and other documents, plans, pictures, and maps submitted by the applicant in furtherance of the case and contained in the official file, the notice in the Wyandotte Echo dated September 19, 2019, and the notices to property owners dated September 12, October 3rd, and November 1, 2019, and the information provided to staff by the Code Enforcement Department today and distributed to the commission tonight, which, I'm sorry, I've got it right here, I haven't given it to you yet. At this time, does any member of the commission have any contact to disclose with regard to this application?
No. Mr. Downs, you're in the audience? Let's go. We need you at the podium. When we call your case, make your way to the front. Let's be ready to go, people. Okay, thank you. Okay, go ahead and give us your name and address and tell us about your project.
Damon Downs. Project is 4510 Parkview, and I have 2 semi-trucks that I run asphalt with, and I just petitioned to park them there at that residence to, that's basically it.
Okay. And this is your first request, your first application for a special use permit?
First application, yes.
Okay. We're going to look over these pictures for just a second. So there's currently no, this is a vacant residential lot, is that correct?
Yes,
And it's in a residential area?
yes, dead end.
Okay, are there any discussions for, or excuse me, any questions for the petitioner? In looking at the photographs, there looks like there's some sort of trailer on the property. Can you explain the existence of that?
That's just a storage trailer. That's a mobile storage trailer.
I need you to speak closer to the microphone if
I'm
you
sorry.
would.
That's just a storage mobile trailer that on the property.
Is it going to stay on the property?
If I need to move it, I will, but as far as I know, it's gonna stay there.
Okay, so you're asking for to allow the trucks and the temporary trailer to be parked on the property?
Yeah, it wasn't in question. I don't think, as far as I know, it wasn't in question, but yeah, if that's the,
I'm just asking you, is it going to stay?
yes.
Okay. Any other questions for the petitioner? Commissioner Neal?
But it also appears to be a couple of, I'm counting this one picture, possibly 3 other type vehicles. One of those, if you drove it in, that would leave 2 vehicles. So is there other things on this property other than the 2 trucks?
There's an RV there,
Okay,
and then there's the other truck there that's not really belong to me.
okay,
So I'm gonna have him remove it. It's
Okay.
not part of my ownership.
right, thank you.
Mr. Chairman, if I might ask him a question. So you see your property there with the green dot on it. We have pictures that kind of, when the code enforcement case came forward, that it was all treed and the leaves were out. Now we have pictures that were taken without the leaves there. There seems to be a plethora of code enforcement violations on your property.
Yeah.
And what would you tell us you're going to do to rectify those? Because really, you've asked for 2 dump trucks. You've got other things being parked that aren't on improved surfaces. You've got it looks like just some junk there, and other things that really aren't allowed in an R1 district. It looks like this is more like a light industrial storage area, and what are you going to do to clean this up? I mean, 2 dump trucks is one thing. Everything else there is something completely different.
Well, that's what she told me, that when I talked to, I don't remember her particular name, that this has to be approved first before the code and, what is it? And I've been cleaning up the property as it is, but I don't particularly know exactly, other than clean up, cars or whatever, what the city wants. But this has to be taken care of, and then she'll come back with the
Well, that would just be for the dump trucks. I don't think that she understood everything else that was there. I think we had complaints of neighbors of the dump trucks, but we didn't know everything else that was there. So I mean, I don't think either one of us had the full story about what was really going on with this property. How long would it take you to come up with a plan to show, give us good pictures, what's out there, how long it's going to take to get it taken off, what's going to stay, what's going to go, the condition of the land where it's going to be parked? How long would it take you to get something like that to us?
Probably about 2 weeks, but I don't know exactly what you're looking for.
All right, yeah, we could discuss it more. Okay, thank you, Mr. Chairman. That's
Okay. Did you have a neighborhood meeting?
Yeah, but no one showed up for it.
Did you submit any minutes for that meeting?
I did, but they were, I sent them, I think about a week ago on the,
I don't think we have anything that shows that there was a meeting held. What date was it?
I sent them by email, and I don't do too good with the computer emails, so my daughter sent them in with an attached email to Jacobs.
Where was the meeting held?
It was held on the property.
And what was the date of that meeting?
I believe it was I'll have to look. It's right here.
And was your sign posted on the property that there was a change?
Currently a sign there now.
No, I don't mean currently. Was there one posted prior to today or the last
Yes.
week or so?
Yes.
When was that sign posted?
Probably,
About the spending land use change?
probably about a week before that, she made me come pick that sign up and put it in the yard, the agent that I was working with. I have it for November 2nd. No, that's when I wrote that up. I have to look on my email.
Also says your tax application is delinquent on
For
it
the
as well.
year or?
Your occupation tax application for your business operations that the address has not been maintained and is currently delinquent.
The business, okay, I paid that. You need that
We've
on?
got a lot of outstanding issues here. Are there other questions for him, Commissioner Miller? Okay. Commissioner Jones?
I had the same one. I had the
Okay.
same notes.
Okay. Anyone else have any questions for the petitioner before I open up the public portion of the meeting? Okay, we'll go ahead and open up the public portion of the meeting. Is there anyone in the audience who wants to speak in favor of or in opposition to the request? Okay, seeing none, we'll close and we'll get staff comment.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'd recommend that this be held over to the January 13th Planning and Zoning Commission, that the applicant be directed by the commission to set up a meeting with staff, set the meeting up this week for sometime in the next 2 weeks to identify a plan for how the property will be cleaned up and code violations will be remedied and what the future condition of the property will look like if this were to be approved.
And neighborhood meeting and occupation, or the tax
Yes.
application?
Correct.
All of those items. Okay. Any questions for staff? Commissioner Miller?
Rob, I'm just wondering if we should make it 60, just because it looks like there's a lot of issues, and I just don't want to come back in 30 days and feel like we got to hold it over again.
I think all we need is, we really just need the plan in 30 days. So, I mean, I think the plan would be like, at the end of the day, I will have, 2 dump trucks and a trailer and a motor home, 2 personal vehicles at different times, and the rest of the property will be cleaned. It'll be parked on an improved surface, and, I think that's what the plan will be, and it will take me this long to get that done. It might be that it turns out that we need to modify the notice on this, and if it is, we will renotice and set a new date. Because I think that's a possibility as well, that there might be other things that need to be added to the special use permit requests that aren't noticed. And if that's the case, we'll have to renotice and reset the hearing, and we'll do that administratively.
That's fine. I just didn't want to get burned in
Right.
30 days.
No, I think we can do that before January 13th.
Can I have clarity on something?
Questions for staff? Okay, seeing none, I'll entertain a motion.
Move to
Motion
hold.
Motion to approve the holdover for 30 days.
Second.
A motion to hold over to the January 13th meeting made by Commissioner Huey, seconded by Commissioner Miller. Any discussion?
Yes.
Motion for holdovers to include that the petitioner meet with staff to clarify the outstanding issues in the current petition. Okay, roll call, please.
Ernst?
Aye.
Huey?
Aye.
Jones?
Aye.
Miller?
Aye.
Neal?
Aye.
Mr. Chairman, that motion to hold over this application until the January 13, 2020 meeting for the outstanding issues to be addressed with staff passes 5 in favor and none opposed.
Thank you.
Our next application is Special Use Permit SP 2019-107, Tom Irish for 4101 Powell Incorporated. Renewal of a special use permit for an earthen fill at 5700, 5832, 5900, 5831R, and 5841 State Avenue, and 1404 and 1204 and 1215 North 59th Street. Please include the following items as part of the record for this case: the city's currently adopted zoning and subdivision regulations, the official zoning map for the area in question, the city's currently adopted master plan for the area in question, the staff report and attachments dated December 9, 2019, the application and other documents, plans, pictures, and maps submitted by the applicant in furtherance of the case and contained in the official file, the notice in the Wyandotte Echo dated October 17, 2019, and the notices to property owners dated October 17 and October 29, 2019. This time, does any member of the commission have any contact to disclose with regard to this case?
No.
All those for and against, please come to the front of the room.
Good evening. Tom Stiebel, 509 Armstrong Avenue, here on behalf of the applicant. We're here today to ask that this matter be set over to the January agenda. We were hired, Mr. Hutton and I were hired on November 19th by the applicant to represent them in this matter. By that time, we could not meet the timetable of the department to have a public meeting scheduled and post signage. And so we would ask that this matter be set over so that we could comply with the department regulations and rules.
And you want that held over to the January 13th meeting?
Correct.
Any questions for the petitioner? Okay, seeing none, I'll go ahead and open up the public portion of the meeting. Is there anyone in the audience who wants to speak? Yes, please. Give us your name and address.
Barbie Thomas, 5931 State Avenue, Kansas City, Kansas. You guys probably see me here often. Again, we're back here again. Nothing's changed. I mean, his special use permit expired in May, all through June, all through July, still dumping, still dumping, still dumping.
Okay.
And they did set up a meeting, but certain people was not notified of it. They just had it last week at Mason Jar. The only way we was notified was a neighbor of ours wanted to know why we wasn't there. Because we wasn't notified, that's why. Still, like I said, same stuff going on, you know, they want to fill. I'm all about, you know, preserving and upcoming State Avenue because my property's there. But, I mean, they've had how long to do this? And every time we come before you, it's another excuse. They're supposed to be cleaning up. They keep bringing new equipment in and parking it up at the top. And more trucks coming in to dump and certain amount of, I think I've seen them bring like 2, I don't even know what you'd call them, up at the top that was down below. But it just seems like it's another excuse why we can't do it, or, you know, and it just keeps going on and on. I mean, when's enough enough?
We hear you. Okay. Thank you. Yes, sir.
Jason Hussey at 732 North 57th Street. I can also attest that construction has continued during this time, that their permit has expired. They came for a permit in 2018. Staff recommended denial. They are given a 6-month extension with a long list of stipulations to meet. One of those was to come with a plan within 3 weeks of how they are going to address all of the issues. I don't believe that's been, I mean, that was quite a long time ago. I don't think they've come to that. Again, with what Barb has been saying, is just they've been having a long time here to try and get everything together, and they haven't done that. And again, it just seems like it's just another continuance after another. I also wasn't notified of the public meeting either and did not attend.
And you're within the notice area?
Correct.
Okay. All right, thank you very much. Anyone else? Yes, sir.
My name's William Thomas. I'm also at 5931 State Avenue. Right next to the proposed properties where he wants to dump some more. The landscape, as I've said before, goes up, rolls up the hill from mine to his property, their properties. And there's lots of manholes and everything else down there. But I don't see being able to fill that without, the creek's within 50 feet of my house on the other side, and then it goes uphill from there. And I don't see being able to fill that without making my house sit right here in the middle of this. So there's really no way to do that unless it's eventually gonna flood me out.
Okay.
But I'm opposed to their fill altogether and have been. I've been there 12 years and I'm opposed to it still.
All right, thank you very much. Anyone else want to speak in favor of or in opposition to? Okay, seeing none, we'll close the public portion of the meeting. We'll get staff comment.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This permit expired in May. That means that we were likely sending them notices in February or March that, hey, get your renewal done, with no response. Completely ignored until we said that we were going to put it on for denial. So, given the issues with the neighbors, that they haven't completed their previous stipulations, I'd recommend denial.
Questions for staff?
In the report, it says that because of the length of time lapse between when it expired and now, that it wasn't technically a renewal. So I just wanted to point that out and see if that was still considered the case.
That's correct. I mean, generally, if people miss a little bit, we give them the benefit of the doubt and put them on as renewal. But, you know, we were flat out ignored in the request for renewal. And, you know, this has been going on for some time. They understand what those letters mean and what we're supposed to do. You know, does that answer your question?
Okay. Other questions for staff? Yes, Commissioner Miller?
So you don't think if we hold this thing over, if it changes anything?
I mean,
I'm just trying to think of a better deal.
Well, you know, if they were supposed to get us a plan within 3 weeks, and we still don't have all that information, and I believe that's correct, right? We never received the plan. So I mean, they were given a short extension of 6 months with directive and didn't follow it. I don't. Maybe they'll have something else to tell the Board of Commissioners, and then maybe the Board of Commissioners will send it back. But from my perspective,
I just see frustration in the eyes of the neighbors and failure to comply with anything that's been asked of them over and over and over. And so that's where I stand on it. Commissioner Ernst?
To be fair, they have complied with some things. They didn't comply with everything in the last.
I'm sorry?
They have over time complied with some of the stipulations, but just with the last approval, that was not the case.
Okay. Well, we may have some new information here. Do we have new information? Well, I want to hear from the director first. If there's anything pertinent, I'll bring you back up.
I think that it might behoove the commission to ask Mr. Watkins for the information that he has related to this case.
Okay, Matt, would you come up to the mic? Give us your name and address for the record.
Matt Watkins, 4023 North 111th Street, Kansas City, Kansas. When we were here, we were asked to provide some answers to the stipulations. I believe there were 7 stipulations that we needed to answer. And I did provide a letter that answered all those. It didn't put any real time frames on things. We had several concerns and questions about some of the things that have been gone, have happened on that property for a number of years. And so there is a delineation between the activities that we're asking for the special use permit for, and then the activities that have happened there for 30 years plus. They operate a trucking company, they operate several businesses on the site, and we've made it clear on multiple occasions that the activity for the fill happens during a specified time. And there's no fill coming onto that property. There is work that's happening to try and make sure the fill is properly filled on the site, but there's no more material that's come onto the property. So I can vouch for that. So when we're asking for another 30 days, that's all we're asking for. We were trying to notice, I don't know what meeting they were mentioning. We did not have a public meeting. We are planning to have a public meeting here coming up, but we couldn't hit the timeline to get the letters out in order to get folks on. But we're planning on having a public meeting and pushing it forward. But whatever you all decide, I mean, I understand. I mean, we go to the commission or come back or however that works, but we would like 30 more days, and we'll try and answer all these questions.
So what you're saying is they're moving around the existing fill, they're not bringing in new?
Correct.
But I'm seeing head shaking the other way around.
Part of the challenge with that site, and they've raised it before, is that there are large pieces of concrete and large pieces of fill that have come to the site, that have come down on the slope. And so we're moving those back up to get those crushed and actually filled properly. So what they're seeing there is not fill coming to the site, it's fill that's already on the site.
Can you address the one neighbor's concern about the way it's being built that could eventually, or is that out of your?
Yeah, I mean, we're following the SWEPS plan, the plan that was designed and pushed forward by the engineers. So, I mean, in terms of what they're seeing, I don't know exactly his perspective back there, but we wouldn't do anything that would jeopardize anybody else's property. I mean, we're here to try and fill this property and make it more valuable along State Avenue. I mean, that's really what it is. This is a big hole along State Avenue, and there's a lot of work to be done. There's as much fill in that site today as there needs to come to the site. So it could take, I mean, we've been doing this since 2013. So it could take another 5 years.
Okay. Questions for Mr. Watkins?
Yes, so I'm sorry, just point of clarification, what could take another 5 years specifically?
The filling process.
They're about halfway through.
They're about halfway through. The actual amount.
About double the amount, correct?
There's about 280,000 cubic yards of fill that needs to come to the site. There's several projects. It's all based on project and fill availability. And so early on, there just wasn't that much activity. And there has been more activity more recently. But again, you know, we are asking for 30 days. That's what we'd like.
I do have another quick question though. So what do you attribute this, I mean, we, as our chair just indicated, we see differences of opinion. And so what do you attribute? Have you all not gotten with them before to work this out and this has gone on and on?
We've met on every occasion we could. I've made myself personally available to any one of these folks at any point in time that they want to. I've had multiple meetings with Mr. Hussey. I'm more than available to talk through any questions or any concerns that they may have on the site. I mean, it's a project, and it's a big project that is going to take several years to accomplish. And so part of that is there are some internal communication challenges within our group that we will improve. I can tell you right now that we just need to improve our response. There's one person that's dedicated for the response that's internal that hasn't been communicating as well with me, and I apologize for that.
Other questions from Mr. Watkins? Commissioner Neal.
So you say the stipulations have been completed.
I responded to the stipulations. So
Okay.
we responded in a letter to the stipulations.
Okay, so you responded
Yes.
to the stipulations. So was a plan submitted within 3 weeks?
the letter, the response to the stipulation was submitted within 3 weeks.
Okay, but not a plan.
Not a plan per se. I mean, the plan then looks at, okay, are we going to rezone this if we need to rezone it? Or are some of these issues inherent to the property that have been there for 30 years, that they've been operating for a long time? And so what we needed to do is bring an attorney in. And we've had challenge, we've had 2 different false starts with 2 different attorneys, and now we've come to an agreement with Mr. Hutton and Mr. Steibel to represent us.
Am I correct that these stipulations are from 2018?
The stipulations were from the holdover for the 6-month
Okay.
extension.
So when was that?
November.
November of 20.
Of 28?
Yeah.
Okay. So just so I'm clear, over a year and the remediation plan hasn't been submitted?
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Commissioner Jones?
So as a point then of clarification, your short-term goal is the basis for us being here right now. And then you said your long-term is it's going to take 5 years to get that field. From your perspective, in 5 years, and I would think that it's going to be incremental improvement. And so at the end of the 5 years, from your perspective, with what you've heard as neighbor opposition, do you think from a property value standpoint, because especially with the gentleman, how he said it's, going to really be to his detriment, what say ye?
I don't wish to speak to that question. I can answer your question from a fill perspective. That they have a plan that they have to follow that is approved by staff, and that's what they're doing. They're filling that plan, and that was part of what is going on. I will take special note to try and address his concerns and questions when we do come forward. So at a point that makes sense, we can sit down and try and address what his concerns are. Right now, I couldn't tell you what that is. But as far as from a property value standpoint, absolutely. I mean, everything along State Avenue right now that is going from, I would say, 635 west, there is some momentum there between the school district and the housing authority, and so a lot of other folks investing a fair amount of money, from the new food distribution to the new maintenance facility for the housing authority. There's about $5 to $8 million worth of investment right in that corridor. And this process will take some time, but at a point when it's right, the Dale Brothers and State Tractor will go find a new space to move to, and that whole area will become, it will improve.
Any other questions for Mr. Watkins? Okay, thank you, Matt.
Thank you.
Okay, going back to the director.
So, Matt, I apologize, and to the commission, this should have been in your packet, but I think that I neglected to move this from my email to the case file. But I do have Matt's response before the commissioners meeting last year, and that letter committed related to keeping the commercial area and the non-fill equipment in that area. We were to receive an update within 90 days of the end of that, which would have been at the end of this 3 months, which I don't think that we've received. Removing all the trailers and equipment from the residentially zoned areas. They committed to do that within 90 days, and that has not been updated. Testing the fill within 90 days. I haven't had anything on that. Silt control within 90 days. I haven't been updated on that. And the list kind of goes on from there. Ownership will work with neighbors and director to set up a reasonable alert system and chain of communication for receiving feedback within the next 90 days. I'm very confident that wasn't done. This is a hard one. I think the project's a good one at the end of the day. I've always stated that. I think it's a good project, but its execution has been poor, and their communication has not been good. And, you know, this isn't the first time their responses have been late, or we've had to hound them over and over and over and over to get anybody in, or to get any response to the need to renew this. And I don't think, based on my reading of that, unless Matt tells me that I'm missing something else in what was committed to do in that letter, then I don't think I can change my recommendation.
What does 30 days give us? Or what can it get us?
I guess we'll have a more detailed response to what they have and haven't done that they said they were going to do last time. You'll have a more accurate record of that.
Commissioner Jones.
So I guess the only reason in my mind that we're contemplating this at this point, especially with the neighbor opposition, is because it sounds like, and from the report, that there's a greater good here. Were it not for the greater good, this would be a no, a no. That's the only reason, but it's still strong neighbor opposition. So my thought would be only because of the greater good, and I guess that's what I would want to hear from staff, because I just wanted clarification on it. Sounds like you still think it's a good project, but we are very sensitive and take into strong account public opposition, especially neighbors this close in proximity to the project that feel like they haven't been given answers.
So I would note that it is expired. If they're working on the site, they could be cited for it for fill activities right now. So if the neighbors, I'll give you my cards. If you see dump trucks coming in and out, I don't know what the planning commission action will be, but if it is approved to go to board of commissioners, there's no new fill coming in, no work in that area right now. So I'll give you my card, and if you see any of that, let me know, and I'll come out personally. That's about as good as I could do if you.
So if you think if we go from your perspective, go one more round, we could end the cycle and get everything addressed perhaps, or at least attempt?
Well, I think we thought that last time.
Uh-oh.
It's pretty rare to give a 6-month extension on a long-term special use permit. And they took 6 months and we're a year later.
Commissioner Miller.
Mine's more of a statement, but I don't know why, but just have a feeling around this one and reviewing all this stuff, which is the whole reason I mentioned the holdover. I think we're going to get to the Board of Commissions. They're going to kick it right back to us and say we need more detail. I don't think that they're going to flat out deny it. I don't think they'll flat out approve it. I think they're going to kick it right back to us and say we need more detail. So the whole reason I brought up the holdover was to say, let's get more detail. We'll have more basis to stand on in January than we do right now. If they really just hired counsel 2 weeks ago, Board of Commission's going to say, well, we got to give them an opportunity. That's just my belief.
That's probably a fair statement.
So then I have a question then. So do we, is it within our purview, our jurisdiction to be able to say, you know, this is it, either have the stuff in or?
No, all you're doing is recommending action to the Board of Commissioners. But you can hold it over and say, get this in, or you can see by the looks on our faces what your recommendation will be.
Yeah, I mean, that's kind of my thought, is you hold it over. If we don't have the information, then we have a good foot to stand on and say denial. I mean, that's what it is.
My concern is that in 6 months, none of the 9 items they agreed to have been done to your knowledge? You got a letter, but...
I got a letter, but I don't think anything in the letter has been fulfilled.
There were 9 specific items, some of which had specific timelines, and we're going to wait another month and see if they could tell us if they're going to be able to do that?
Okay, any other questions for the staff before I entertain a motion? Seeing none, I'll stand for a motion.
I move the Kansas City Planning Commission recommend denial of petition SP 2019-107 based on staff comments and lack of action on the parties.
Okay, motion is for denial by Commissioner Ernst for reasons stated in the motion. Is there a second?
A second.
Seconded by Commissioner Neal. Is there a discussion? Okay, roll call.
Ernst?
Aye.
Huey?
No.
Jones?
Aye.
Miller?
No.
Neal?
Aye.
Carson?
No.
That motion fails. It's 3-3.
Is there another motion?
Move to hold over for 30 days.
Second.
Motion to hold over for 30 days. Moved and seconded. Moved by Commissioner Miller, seconded by Commissioner Huey. Discussion?
That date is January 13th, for the
Thank you.
record.
January 13th. Motion to hold over to January 13th. Any discussion?
Mr.
Roll
I
call.
have a reason why we're holding over.
To work with staff to answer questions in the staff report.
Thank you. I'm sorry, you ready for roll call?
Yes, roll call, please.
Ernst?
No.
Huey?
Aye.
Jones?
Aye.
Miller?
Aye.
Neal?
No.
And Carson.
Aye.
Mr. Chairman, that motion to hold over this application until the January 13th meeting for the reasons stated by the maker passes 4 in favor and 2 opposed.
Okay, we have some work to do.
Our next application is Special Use Permit SP 2019-112, Pete Davis Jr. with KZK Properties. Special use permit for a car dealership with auto repair at 1830 Quindaro Boulevard. Please include the following items as part of the record for this case: the city's currently adopted zoning and subdivision regulations, the official zoning map for the area in question, the city's currently adopted master plan for the area in question, the staff report and attachments dated December 9, 2019, the application of their documents, plans, pictures, and maps submitted by the applicant in furtherance of the case and contained in the official file, the notice in the Wyandotte Echo dated November 13, 2019, and the notices to property owners dated November 14, 2019. Does any member of the commission have any contact to disclose with regard to this case?
No.
All those for and against, please come to the front of the room.
Good evening.
Good evening, sir.
Go ahead and give us your name and address and tell us about your project.
My name is Pete Davis Jr. My address is 1903 Quindaro, Kansas City, Kansas, 66104.
Okay, and tell us about your project.
I've been inquiring about the building. So I grew up in the area. I've been inquiring about the building since I was a kid, and I was able to purchase the building. And what I would like to do is turn it into like a detail shop and car dealership, small mechanic work.
Okay, are there questions for the petitioner? How many cars do you think you're going to be having for sale at any one time?
Really, no more than 10, but really what I really want to do, I want to obtain the dealer license and sell the cars online. Like if someone wants a car, if I got my license, I can take them to a dealer, to the auction, and charge them maybe $150, $200 to get them a car. Really not house cars on the lot, because I don't want it cluttered.
So you're going to basically do it more based on orders and then picking up the car that a customer wants and then getting it detailed and then selling them the end product?
Yes, sir.
And what about the mechanic work you're going to be doing?
Well, the mechanic work I'm going to be doing is like, really like if I go get the cars, like oil, small like oil changes, radiator flushes and stuff like that, and to dispose of the chemicals that come. You can Google this, Earth 911, and you can call them out and they'll come pick up the material for you and they'll charge you a small fee.
Okay. Other questions for the petitioner? Yes,
So at any one given time, how many, for all the different things that you plan, how many cars do you think might be on the lot at one time?
Probably no more than 10 at the most.
And that's detailing, sales, and service.
Well, the detailing is, you know what I'm saying, it's like, the detail is like person call, like, hey, I want my car detailed, you come in. That's a going, like a come and go thing, like a customer. Their car's not gonna sit there like overnight. It's like a,
You're not going to have them stacked up waiting to be
no.
detailed?
No, I don't
All right,
wanna-
so you think 10 cars at the lot at any given time for all of the services you're going to provide?
Yes.
Okay. Other questions? Okay. Seeing none, we'll open up the public portion of the meeting. Anyone in the audience want to speak in favor of or in opposition to the request? Seeing none, we'll get staff comment.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The way I count this, he only has 7 parking places on the site, plus the 2 under the canopy for detailing and 2 inside of the facility. There's a certain amount of customer parking that's required on the site with that. I'm not recalling the exact size of the building, but you would have to maintain open customer parking, and then that would only allow for, I believe the number before was 4 cars for sale on the site. So his number at 10 just struck me, and as I knew the site wasn't that big and didn't have that many parking places. So I'm waiting for an answer here for just a moment on what that final count was on the cars, because I'm trying to find it in the staff report here for cars for sale. Let's say for the stipulation to expedite this, that it would be the number of spaces available less the required parking for the size of the commercial building, the area that's not already parking. So there'll be a certain number of those spaces that have to be reserved, and you can't line all those spaces with used cars.
Okay.
So, and we can figure that out and get back with him on what.
So if the
that number is.
motion's to approve, it'll be subject to the calculation for the number of cars that can be stored on the property.
Correct.
Do you have a question about that, sir?
Yes, but on a car situation, I'm really not gonna have cars parked there. I really want to obtain the dealer license so I can, like, when people want cars, I can take them to the auction and get them cars.
Right.
I'm not really gonna have it filled up with
I
cars.
understand, but we're going to give you, staff is going to give you a calculation. You're going to work with them. If we approve this, they're going to give you a calculation of how many cars you can have on the site.
So there's 2 surplus spaces, so he could have 2 used cars for sale on the lot at any one time, and that's it.
Okay? All right. So any questions for staff? Seeing none, I'll stand for a motion.
Move to approve, subject to the stipulations in the staff report.
Second.
Motion to approve by Commissioner Miller, seconded by Commissioner Jones. Discussion? Seeing none, roll call.
Mr. Chairman, I
Yeah.
would just clarify that 2-car maximum is not in the staff report. Is that part of your motion?
Yes.
With the additional staff
With
stipulations,
the revised staff stipulations and suggestions.
based on the number of cars on site. Okay, discussion? Roll call.
Ernst,
Aye.
Huey,
Aye.
Jones,
Aye.
Miller,
Aye.
Neal.
No.
Mr. Chairman, that motion to recommend approval of this special use permit, subject to the staff's revised comments, passes 4 in favor and 1 opposed.
Thank you. This will be heard again on January 9th at 7 p.m. in this room.
Our next application is special use permit SP 2019-113, Edward J. Bain, home occupation special use permit for a short-term rental Airbnb at 1324 North 75th Drive. Please include the following items as part of the record for this case: the city's currently adopted zoning and subdivision regulations, the official zoning map for the area in question, the city's currently adopted master plan for the area in question, the staff report and attachments dated December 9, 2019, the application and other documents, plans, pictures, and maps submitted by the applicant in furtherance of the case and contained in the official file, the notice in the Wyandotte Echo dated November 14, 2019, and the notices to property owners dated November 13, 2019. Does any member of the commission have any contact to disclose with regard to this application?
No.
All those for and against, please come to the front of the room.
Good evening.
Good evening, Commissioners. Edward J. Bain, 1324 North 75th Drive, Kansas City, Kansas. My plan is to rent out the main level of my home. The basement is finished, is where I would live. With the upper level, there's 3 empty bedrooms, 2 full bathrooms, my plan would be families. I would rent it. If someone wants one room or all 3, it would go to the same person. I would not mix and match with a couple from over here and a couple from over here. It would be the same people renting the entire
You and one other party.
I would not have other, I would not have people from, a person from Oklahoma and a person from Iowa. I would not rent it at the exact same time. It would be one family.
You don't want to
one
mix
group.
Iowa and Oklahoma.
Right. And so that's my plan. There's separate entrances. I would enter through the garage straight to the basement. The guest staying would enter from the main level.
Okay. Any questions for the petitioner? Seeing none, is there anyone in the audience that wants to speak in favor of or in opposition to the request? Seeing none, we'll close the public portion of the meeting. We'll get staff comment.
I'd recommend approval subject to comments in the staff report.
But you're going to leave my comments alone. Okay. Any questions for staff?
I don't find the time length in the report, and it's very possible I missed it, but this is probably a 2-year.
Yeah, they're all 2 years to begin with, yes, sir.
He's on site, so. Okay, I'll entertain a motion.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Okay, motion to approve for 2 years made by Commissioner Jones, seconded by Commissioner Miller. Any discussion? Seeing none, roll call.
Ernst?
Aye.
Huey?
Aye.
Jones?
Aye.
Miller?
Aye.
Neal?
Aye.
Mr. Chairman, that motion to recommend approval of this special use permit, subject to the staff's comments and suggestions, passes. 5 in favor and none opposed.
Thank you. This will
Thank
be
you.
again on January 9th at 7 p.m. in this room.
Our next application is special use permit SP 2019-114, Bill Duckworth with Brick Road Motorsports. Special use permit for a used car lot at 2820 Row Lane, number U. Please include the following items as part of the record for this case: the city's currently adopted zoning and subdivision regulations, the official zoning map for the area in question, the city's currently adopted master plan for the area in question, the staff report and attachments dated December 9, 2019, the application and other documents, plans, pictures, and maps submitted by the applicant in furtherance of the case and contained in the official file, the notice in the Wyandotte Echo dated November 14, 2019, and the notices to property owners dated November 13, 2019. At this time, does any member of the commission have any contact to disclose with regard to this application?
No.
All those for and against, please come to the front of the room.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Go ahead and give us your name and address. Tell us about your project.
My name is Bill Duckworth. The address is 2820 Row Lane, Building U, Kansas City, Kansas. I am requesting a special use permit for a small used car lot. That resident, or at that,
Okay, and how many cars are you going to be having out there at any one time?
2 to 3. It's my own, I'm my own bank, my own financing, so.
Okay, any service work, any detail work or anything like that?
No, the service, I do auto work, but that's in Johnson County, but I couldn't get a permit for sales in Johnson County, but I also rent this section here, so I'd be able to get a used car lot in Wyandotte County.
Okay. Any further questions for the petitioner? Okay, seeing none, is there anyone in the audience that wants to speak in favor of or in opposition to this request? Seeing none, we'll close the public portion of the meeting. We'll get staff comment.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We'd recommend approval, subject to the stipulations in the staff report.
Questions for staff? Seeing none, stand for a motion.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Motion to approve by Commissioner Huey, seconded by Commissioner Miller. Discussion? Roll call.
Ernst,
Aye.
Huey,
Aye.
Jones,
Aye.
Miller,
Aye.
Neal.
Aye.
Mr. Chairman, that motion to recommend approval of this application, subject to the staff's comments and suggestions, passes. 5 in favor and none opposed.
Thank you. This will be heard again on January 9th at 7 p.m. in this room.
Mr. Chairman, that takes us to our vacation application, UE 2019-14. Michael Callahan.
Janet, I think we're still at SP 119.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Which one?
I'm trying to move along too fast, I guess.
Oh, yes.
Okay, our next application is special use permit, SP 2019-119, Ladina, Washington. Special use permit for a daycare facility at 9151 Parallel Parkway. Please include the following items as part of the record for this case. The city's currently adopted zoning and subdivision regulations, the official zoning map for the area in question, the city's currently adopted master plan for the area in question, the staff report and attachments dated December 9, 2019, the application and other documents, plans, pictures, and maps submitted by the applicant in furtherance of the case and contained in the official file, the publication in the Echo dated November 14, 2019, and the notices to property owners dated November 13, 2019. Does any member of the commission have any contact to disclose with regard to this case?
No.
All those for and against, please come to the front of the room.
Good evening. Go ahead and give us your name and address again, if you would, please, and
Sure.
tell us about your project.
Sure. Medina, Washington, 9151 Parallel Parkway, Kansas City, Kansas. Here to get a special use permit for the operation of the facility.
Okay, and how many children did you say you're going to have on site? Or did we ask you that before?
Forty-seven.
47 students? And what's your staff size?
4 classrooms, 4.
So a total of 4 staff members on site on any given day?
Yes.
Okay. Any other questions for the petitioner?
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
So are those all older children then? If you only have 4 staff members and 47 kids, they all have to be older children, correct? You can't have that. If you've got younger kids, you've got to have a higher staff ratio in each room.
You can have 10 for the toddlers.
Okay, so no babies then? So toddlers and up?
We have toddlers. We do have an infant class. 1 infant class. I would have to look up the regs to see exactly how many infants you can have.
Yeah, you're going to have more staff than 4.
Well, it will have to be in accordance with whatever licensing guidelines. Is.
Right.
That's not within our purview to restrict, or is it?
Well,
We don't know the regulations.
we don't know the regulations, but you only have 5 parking spaces and you're going to have more staff than that. And you got to have people coming in and out. I think we've got some issues to work through here with that. I wouldn't know where the 47 child number, but it seems like we're going to have more parking spaces, even with the variance. Based on
Right.
I mean, she's not going to be able to operate. They won't give her a permit to operate. I don't know where they're going to park.
Correct. So we need to work out the parking situation and what's that going to entail.
I think Ms. Washington will need to give us the number of students, the breakdown of what those student
group.
mixes could be, and what the staff ratio is going to be. Because I assume that she would be there as well. So even with 4 rooms and her, that's still 5 people. And your current plan only has 5 parking spaces, right?
No.
8. So, but 47 people coming in and out is going to require a lot more parking than that.
Commissioner Huey had a question.
Besides staff for the classroom, will you have anybody like doing administrative work or anybody operating a kitchen?
We would like it to function as the facility that you all built. It's off of 47th Street, but the parents do not have to come in to sign. They bring the iPad out to the vehicle, and so it's the point of access is right there, and they go ahead and make their U-turn to take their little one and go out.
But my question was, will you have food service or anybody else in administration? Will you have their offices within the building besides the 4 classrooms?
Yes, we'll have a food server.
So how many total staff and administration would you have,
So for
including your teachers?
including teachers. So a total of 6, including the teachers.
So Rob, we're short parking, and we're going to need more clarification on the age groups to determine the actual staff numbers,
Yes.
which is going to require what, holdover?
Yeah, I would think so. I want to make sure that this is correct. I didn't understand the number of students and the parking ratio, and that there were, and I still don't know that they're going to have infants that 6 staff is correct. I think that ratio is like 1 to 3 or 1 to 4. It's pretty low, so, I mean, that makes that, if you only have 4 rooms and one of them's dedicated to infants, it doesn't make sense you're going to have 3 infants in that room. So I think we need to talk about that some more. I don't know that we'll be able to figure that out tonight. But I would continue with the public hearing and.
Yes.
And also for the drive that has been submitted, that they could actually park along there also.
That doesn't meet the parking regulations. That's not accurate.
Okay.
It's not
Thank
a
you.
dedicated parking area.
Thank
Okay.
you.
We're going to go ahead and open up the public portion of the meeting. I know there's at least one gentleman.
Can I have?
Yes.
I just want one
Commissioner Ewing?
clarification.
Yes.
So in the staff report, you say that hours of operation will be 6 a.m. to 4 p.m.
6 a.m. to 6 p.m.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, I'm going to open up the public portion of the meeting. Is there anyone in the audience who wants to speak in favor or opposition to? Please come to the mic. Need you to give your name and address again for the record.
Again, name is Huey Clay,
Okay.
9110 Garfield Avenue.
Okay, and I know we heard from you before, your concerns are with the number of vehicles entering and exiting the area.
Yes.
And the traffic along Parallel Parkway. Anything else that you wanted to add to your statement?
Well, you just finished where I was going to go to next, was
Okay.
understanding the age range of the kids that would be there. And after the meeting, we spoke, Ms. Washington and I spoke a little bit, and I asked her for, were they going to go out, take a van, and pick up other kids as they got out from school during the day? Like, it's so convenient for the new ones being built there on 91st Street.
Uh-huh.
And she informed me that no, they weren't going to do that, okay? So I have been concerned and didn't understand. I think we're about on the same page. There is a traffic issue truly going to be there. And I'm trying to tell you, I don't know, he mentioned that there's been a traffic study, but I don't know if it went far enough to consider what happens with the elementary school, the buses that goes through there. This is not as simple as I think what I'm hearing is going on. The other thing I want to ask a question of is I was reading a report that you guys put out, and it said there was a neighborhood meeting on November 15th, I believe it was. I've talked to people in the neighborhood, some of them didn't show this evening, but we've seen nothing about a neighborhood meeting. And I looked at the records that was the attachment on that document you guys put out, and it seemed like it was a family of people there out of maybe it was 4 or 5 people attended, and 3 of those looked like family members. So I don't know what happened with notification for the neighborhood to have some discussion on this.
Okay, we'll get you some clarification on that to find
I'd
out.
appreciate that.
All right.
Really. Because, I mean, we're way behind the 8 ball.
Okay.
None of us knew of anything here.
Okay.
Okay.
Anything else you want us to check on for you?
Let me just ask this question more toward the engineering side. The present street that runs north-south there for the imaging center, it's owned by them. City does not plow that area or anything. And this new road that's being run parallel to that existing road, is that going to be taken in within the city and gets maintenance and plowing?
Those are both private
It'd be
drives.
private drive.
Okay, yeah. Because, you know, even much the drainage under the existing road was a real cost factor. About 2 years had to been dug up, taking care of stormwater runoff. And it was pretty expensive. They did not like that.
Okay, we'll get you some clarification on the notice area. Thank you. Anyone else want to speak? Okay, we'll close the public portion of the meeting. We'll get staff comments. If you could address the gentleman's concern about the notice area, would that neighborhood directly to the south be within the notice
Yeah,
area?
his home would definitely be in the notice area. It's 200 feet, so it would probably even catch some of the houses across the street. So we'll go back and review the notices on that as well if this is held over.
Okay, great, thank you. All right, and your staff comment, is it still to hold over to get further clarification on numbers?
Yes.
Questions
To,
for staff?
January 13th.
I don't really have a question, but a comment. So, you know, trying to satisfy everybody's concern, especially with a holdover. The church and the daycare, since they're going to be co-located, it'll be about any activity as well at the church and the daycare when you start calculating numbers of cars and parking and traffic and all of that.
I don't think there's a church here.
I looked at something I thought is.
Well, Oak Ridge is the Oak
No,
Ridge.
no. I'm talking about within the report, and maybe I need clarification because I thought it was going to be separate, and then I saw something in here where it's going to be a church and a daycare. So I just wanted to get
So-
clarification. Unless something's wrong. or
I believe this is a church-operated daycare.
Correct.
So there's no church here. It's just that, at least that's our understanding, that it's a church
Well,
operating
just
daycare.
clarification
You're right.
on that because I
We'll,
was
we'll
looking
figure
at
that out
something.
as well.
Okay,
Yeah.
within the holdover period. Okay. Further questions of staff? If not, I'll entertain a motion.
Move to hold over for 30 days.
Second.
Motion to hold over to January 13th, made by Commissioner Miller for further clarification of outstanding issues, seconded by Commissioner Neal. Any discussion on motion to hold over? Seeing none, roll call.
Ernst,
Aye.
Ewing,
Aye.
Jones,
Aye.
Miller,
Aye.
Neal.
Aye.
Mr. Chairman, that motion to hold over this application until the January 13th meeting passes, 5 in favor and none opposed.
Thank you.
Now that takes us to the vacation application, UE 2019-14. Michael Callahan, vacation of utility easements at 5205 North 130th Terrace. Please include the following items as part of the record for this case. The city's currently adopted zoning and subdivision regulations, the official zoning map for the area in question, the city's currently adopted master plan for the area in question, the staff report and attachments dated December 9, 2019, the application and other documents, plans, pictures, and maps submitted by the applicant in furtherance of the case and contained in the official file, the publication in the Echo dated November 14, 2019, and the notices to property owners dated November 13, 2019. At this time, does any member have any contact to disclose with regard to this case?
Yes. I sold both of the lots to Mr. and Mrs. Callahan that are involved in the vacation of easement, and in speaking with legal counsel, typically I would recuse myself from this case. However, my recusing myself deprives us of a quorum, so there is an exception that's available according to legal counsel, so.
And I would just add to that we will verify that between now and Board of Commissioners. If there was an error in that, we'll ask them to send it back for a new hearing.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. Matt Watkins, 4023 North 111th Street, Kansas City, Kansas. I'm here on behalf of Michael and Lisa Callahan, who are owners of Lot 64 and 65. The address is 5205 and 5125 North 130th Terrace in Kansas City, Kansas, in Freeman Farms. Mr. and Mrs. Callahan could not be here this evening, and they are out of town. They've purchased the lots 64 and 65 with the intent of building a new home on the combined parcel. Therefore, they will need to vacate the utility easement that exists between the two parcels. There's no utilities in that easement. It's just a platted easement. There have been no opposition expressed by the neighbors, the homeowners. The neighborhood meeting was not required for a utility vacation. They purchased the two lots so they could have a larger parcel of land that's consistent with the surrounding properties in Freeman Farms. Mr. Callahan's the new Kansas City, Kansas police chief, and his wife is a retired Chicago police officer.
Fire chief.
Excuse me, fire chief. She is a police officer. She was a retired police officer. They're both looking forward to building a new home in Kansas City, Kansas, and we asked for your approval of the vacation of the easement tonight. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions? Seeing none, we'll open up the public portion of the meeting. Anyone in the audience want to speak in favor of or in opposition to this request? Seeing none, we'll go ahead and close the public portion and get staff comment.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We'd recommend approval.
Any questions for staff? Seeing none, I'll stand for a motion.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Motion to approve made by Commissioner Huey, seconded by Commissioner Jones. Any discussion? Roll call, please.
Ernst,
Aye.
Huey,
Aye.
Jones,
Aye.
Miller,
Aye.
Neal.
Aye.
Mr. Chairman, that motion to recommend approval of this vacation application passes 5 in favor and none opposed.
Thank you. This will be heard again on January 9th at 7 p.m. Thank you.
That takes us now to our plan review applications. The first one is PR 2019-27. Jesus I'm sorry. Thank you. Final plan review for an accessory structure at 4301 Powell Avenue. Please include the following items as part of the record for this case: the city's currently adopted zoning and subdivision regulations, the official zoning map for the area in question, the city's currently adopted master plan for the area in question, the staff report and attachments dated December 9, 2019, the application and other documents, plans, pictures, and maps submitted by the applicant in furtherance of the case and contained in the official file, and the notices to property owners dated November 13, 2019. This time, does any member of the commission have any contact to disclose with regard to this case?
No.
All those for and against, please come to the front of the room.
Good evening, sir.
My name is Jesus Castañeda, 911 Pacific, Kansas City, Kansas 66101. And I'm here to, I'm requesting, actually, it was 5,000 square feet, and I was changed it to 4,000 square feet with the front porch, 10 by 50, and it's used for recreational building. Part is gonna be basketball and then a little, small indoor soccer for my family. It's all family use.
Okay, so you're changing the square footage from 5,000 to 4,000?
So to actually, yes, yes.
Okay.
Because of the porch, because they actually, I gotta build a porch in front of it outside of the building.
Okay. Questions for the petitioner? Okay, seeing none, will, is there anyone in the audience want to speak in favor of or in opposition to this request? Seeing none, we'll close the public portion. We'll get staff comment.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'd recommend approval. And I would just say 5,000 square feet, including the porch, and that way we don't have any issues with that. I think that'll all fit within that. And
Okay, thank you. Questions for staff? Seeing none, I'll entertain a motion.
Second.
Motion to approve by Commissioner Huey, seconded by Commissioner Jones. Any discussion? Seeing none, roll call.
Ernst,
Aye.
Yui,
Aye.
Jones,
Aye.
Miller,
Aye.
Neal.
Aye.
Mr. Chairman, that motion to approve this application, subject to the staff's comments and suggestions, passes 5 in favor and none opposed.
Thank you. This will be heard again on January 9th at 7 PM in this room.
Mr.
Okay.
Chairman, this will not be heard. This is a final plan review.
Oh, I'm sorry.
That's all
All
right.
right, you're approved. You don't have to come back.
Our next application is Plan Review Application PR 2019-30. Kurt Winters with UG Water Pollution Control Department. Preliminary and final plan review for upgrades to the existing Wolcott wastewater treatment plant influent pump station at 5425 North 99th Street. Please include the following items as part of the record for this case: the city's currently adopted zoning and subdivision regulations, the official zoning map for the area in question, the city's currently adopted master plan for the area in question, the staff report and attachments dated December 9, 2019, the application and other documents, plans, pictures, and maps submitted by the applicant in furtherance of the case and contained in the official file, and the notices to property owners dated November 13, 2019. Does any member of the commission have any contact to disclose with regard to this case?
No.
All those for and against, please come to the front of the room.
Good evening.
Good evening. My name is David Lotz. I'm with Continental Consulting Engineers. I'm representing the Unified Government. My address is 11006 Parallel Parkway, Kansas City, Kansas, zip code 66109. I've got some members with me from Continental Consulting Engineers. That's who I'm employed by, as well as HDR Engineering. We're here to answer any questions that you might have. What we're doing, or what we're hoping to accomplish with this application, is we're taking an existing lift station site, pump station site. We're going to demo that, and we're going to build a new one to accommodate additional development within the unified government. As part of that development, there'll be 4 structures. One will be a sanitary sewer wet well, one will be a valve vault, one will be a electrical building, and the 4th structure will be a generator, a diesel generator. We've had our neighborhood meeting. Essentially, I'm here to answer really any questions that you might have. If I can answer those, and we've got members of city staff as well as HDR Engineering to answer those questions.
Okay. Are there questions for the petitioner? I was wondering who all these people were. I didn't know if they were fans or if they were looking for a cure for insomnia.
I've got quite a crew, don't I?
You do. Okay, any questions? Seeing none, is there anyone in the audience that wants to speak in favor or in opposition to the request? Seeing none, I will close it and I will get the staff comment.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We'd recommend approval, subject to the stipulations in the staff report.
Okay, I feel like you've waited this long. We should offer you some sort of a resistance, but
kind of beverage.
we are all worn out. Any questions for staff? Seeing none, I'll stand for a motion.
Move to approve, subject to the stipulations in the staff report.
Second.
Motion to approve by Commissioner Miller, seconded by Commissioner Jones. Any discussion? Roll call.
Ernst,
Aye.
Yui,
Aye.
Jones,
Aye.
Miller,
Aye.
Neal.
Aye.
Mr. Chairman, that motion to recommend approval of this application, subject to the staff's comments and suggestions, passes 5 in favor and none opposed.
And will this be heard again on January 9th?
Yes, it will.
Yes, January 9th at 7 PM. Thank you very much.
Mr.
Thank you for
Chairman,
your patience.
Mr. Chairman, we have 2 more items on the agenda.
That will not be heard. Thank you.
The first one is consideration of the 2020 deadlines calendar, and then Mr. Richardson has an item.
So every year, the code requires that you all adopt the official calendars for the various bodies for the year. The format of the calendar hasn't changed. The notes are all still the same. I'd recommend you approve the calendar.
Any questions for the director on the 2020 calendar? Okay, seeing none, I'll entertain a motion to approve the 2020 deadline calendar.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Motion approved by Commissioner Huey, seconded by Commissioner Miller. Any discussion? Do we need a roll call, Janet?
No, just go ahead and,
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you, passes.
The final thing is, if anyone had any surveys to turn in for their, for the CMIP process, please get those to Janet tomorrow because they're wanting to get those finalized.
And you sent those back out in the packet, correct, Janet? Yes, you did.
I sent that out today.
Today? Yes.
Okay.
Okay, but they have been resent out, so, all right, we'll need to get those in to Janet tomorrow.
Please.
Okay, anything else?
Am I supposed to do something else?
You were gonna tell them.
Oh, so you all probably already know this by now, but this is my third from the last meeting as the planning director, I think. I've taken a promotion within the city to work broader in the development process. My new title is going to be Director of Development Coordination and Customer Service Success.
How big will your business card be?
It's going to be a 3x5 note card.
Yes, there you go. Yeah, about that, there you go, thank you.
Anyway, it's been we'll save all this for later, I'm sure. So anyway, that's just news you should know. My position is advertised. It was a little weird to write your own job, post your own position description while you're still holding it, but I will stay planning director until my spot's filled, which we anticipate the hiring process to conclude by the end of January, and then I would probably do the February meetings, and they would come in and start in March. So,
First of all, congratulations on the promotion.
thank you.
We've loved working with you, even though at times it does not seem like we have. But we appreciate everything that you've done, and not only for us, but for the community as well.
Thank you very much.
So is Janet gonna have dual roles too?
Janet's going to stay on and help the new person.
All right.
Well, and really, she's only doing that because she said that I've out-survived 5 other planning directors, and I'm going to out-survive you too. So she's just keeping her word.
She's keeping her record. And Janet, are you the longest tenured unified government employee? Is that, no? You're third, okay.
Wilba Miller and Mike Tobin are ahead of her.
I'm sorry?
Wilba Miller and Mike Tobin are ahead of her.
Okay. All right. Well,
By a few months.
okay. Well, great. Well, again, congratulations. Anything else? All right. This meeting stands adjourned. Thank you all.